Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta independence. We do a live show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, all about Alberta independence. And on Tuesday, we do a geopolitical show we call Alberta First, because we start the geopolitics with Alberta, go to Canada, then the United States, and around the world.
Hello, everybody.
And we started a new thing. Why don't we tell the audience? We started a companion to every episode that we make. Most of our episodes are about 3 hours long. So I noticed we have ebbs and flows of people coming in. A lot of people can't watch the whole show. So I thought I'd make a companion of every single story that we publish on each episode. That's our X account. So if you do go to our X account, it's Nat and the Guy, and you'll see it's dated Monday the 23rd or whatever episode it is, and all the articles for that particular episode.
All the posts.
All the posts, yeah.
And I will start saying hello to Rath. Unfortunately, I can't bring his message up, but hello and hope you are well. Let us know how everything's going. And also, before we start, please subscribe. It really does help us out. And also, we read all your comments. So if you have anything to say, let us know.
Well, yeah, and I'll also say we do touch on very sensitive topics, whether it's Alberta independence, even when we talk geopolitics. A lot of the stories have to be moved to Rumble. We want to be able to stay in connection with the audience in case YouTube starts to censor or we get canceled off of YouTube. So X is our preferred platform to stay connected with everybody. Okay.
I just noticed I misspelled there no. So that is Konu, what you think. And also, hello, Joe Rush. Hope you're doing well. Says good evening, everybody. Hope you're all having a fabulous day. Cheers, and same to you and everybody else. And also says good afternoon to you and I individually.
Well, he said, yeah, there's coffee and popcorn, so yeah. Fantastic.
I want popcorn.
I was going to say, if you haven't seen the show before, we usually start off with what's going on with the signatures, the petitions, what's going on the ground, and the direction things are going. And then we get into more Alberta news before we go into Canadian national news as it's related to Alberta independence.
Yes. Shall we start with Alberta?
Yeah, we always start with Alberta.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And I forgot to say, after the show, we divided into segments. So if you're watching it on replay, you can go to each segment after.
Oh, we also publish one video a day, 7 days a week in our edited video section. So check that out, especially if you're a hardcore supporter of Alberta independence. A lot of the stuff we're doing now may not have all the thrills and gimmicks to get a lot of views, but it's subjects that need to be touched on. Our most recent video touched on the culture of Alberta and how it's strong, how it's really the only province left in Canada that has a real strong national identity and is investing in that identity for the long term. Canada's completely turned its back on what used to be a unifying identity in the name of multiculturalism. They're erasing everything.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But let's start with Alberta. From Carolina Chic, quote, Tyson woke me up with a phone call at 9:30 a.m. We are running out of sheets. Can you come? While I was in the shower, my husband removed ice from the car. I came to Bonnie Doon in 15 minutes. As they were leaving, 3 people came to sign, so it's good that she was there.
Yeah, a fantastic little couple that's taking signatures and things like that. Obviously, the wife wasn't up. Husband was out there. He's like, oh, crap, I'm running out of sheets. This is a very good sign, especially when there's snow on the ground. It's really cold weather. There was also a convoy that went through remote parts of Alberta that got over 500 signatures. That was fantastic to see. Signatures are really picking up, and it's good to see because this is the last stretch before we really have to submit them early because of what the First Nations is doing and trying to undermine future signatures. That's not all First Nations. It's primarily the elites of these First Nation tribes that I believe the Liberal government is using.
Do you want to watch the...
Yeah, let's watch a little bit. It's always heartening to see Alberta independence doing well. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, you can leave it there. And it goes on for about 2 minutes, and every car has flags. It's really wonderful to see that. I was watching Igor. A lot of people are probably familiar with Igor. He lives in Alberta. He's formerly from the Ukraine, and he's really in favor of Alberta independence. But he said he was talking to a lot of Ukrainian families, and they said they're not going to sign because they're scared of what happened in Ukraine. The Canadian government's going to do the same. They told Igor they're going to deport him for supporting Alberta independence, and that's just not the fact. And the more people stand up with flags, shirts, get loud, and push back against the government's pushback, the more immigrants are going to be willing to sign. I think immigrants are going to be a really hard group to sway over because these are the people that have seen authoritarianism firsthand.
Yeah. But also let's see what students are saying. From Rise of Alberta, quote, Calgary students are backing Alberta independence. They're saying that they're ready to separate from Canada if there is no change. I think it's more like there will be no change, so just separate.
Well, it's always good to see young people starting to come around to Alberta independence. I know they've been highly propagandized, and I mean, they're not as firm as I am when it comes to Alberta independence. I mean, I research the facts every day, so I know Alberta independence is the best way for the future of all Albertans. He seems like he still has a little bit of hope in the rest of Canada. That being said, once the Conservatives kind of lose to Mark Carney in this majority government, I think it's coming up next month, a lot of people are going to come over to the fact Alberta independence is probably the only way forward.
And Mark Carney's been Prime Minister for a year now. What do you think of his Prime Ministership, his leadership?
I don't know. I don't agree with some things he's done. So I do want there to be another election. But of course, if we can't make a change, then I would agree with the separation. Yeah.
And Mark Carney's been Prime Minister.
And I do think it's more, as I always say it, I think it's really important for the youth, especially because they have the opportunity to actually create a future for themselves and the possibility to have children and a future for their children. And it's also important and heartening to see older people from Alberta be supportive of this, maybe not even to see the full changes for themselves, but for the generations that come after that have been completely failed by the Canadian government and by Canadians, other Canadians too.
Well, we've seen this populist movement with Charlie Kirk, who really appealed to the youth in the United States. I think something very similar can happen here in Alberta, especially if Mark Carney gets this majority government, which it looks like the by-elections are going to happen on the 12th of next month. If he secures it in the underhanded ways he does, and then what, Conservatives are going to wait 3 years to the next election? The youth isn't going to wait for that. The youth nationwide, conservative youth will get behind Alberta independence, I believe.
Hopefully, but also interestingly, there are some new petition signature places like Cairo. From Rise of Alberta says, quote, I thought this was an April Fool's joke too, but it's real. Albertans in Cairo, Egypt can sign the Alberta independence petition at the base of the Great Pyramids March 23rd, so today and 24th, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Well, you kind of expect snowboards to be in the United States and even in Mexico, but Cairo, Egypt, this is really something to talk about. I thought it was a meme as well, or it was an April Fool's joke. No, this is 100% real, and I love to see things like this, even if you only get one signature. A lot of people are going to be talking online about this, and this gets the word out to an international audience.
And also, if you want to see all the other signing locations, you can find the Stay Free Alberta website linked down below, and you can just go to locations. Also, remember to bring valid Alberta ID and also proof of residence of Alberta if you haven't signed yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people think they had signed the previous petition to even allow the petition to go forward. That does not mean you signed for the actual vote. So make sure that the documents that you signed were for Alberta independence.
Yes, but we also are also seeing from Mr. Sunshine Baby, quote, I can't talk today, quote, the Alberta referendum petition is on track to surpass the required number of signatures needed to trigger a referendum, but you can't stop and you can't get lazy. If you haven't signed the petition yet, get out and sign it now. We need everyone to get out and sign. Albertans are ready for independence and prosperity. Is Canada ready for what's about to happen?
Yeah, now is the time. Next month is going to be a very big month for Alberta independence. I believe on the 7th of next month is the first hearing to stop all signatures going forward from the First Nations in the courts. Then on the 12th, I believe we have the by-elections for Mark Carney. Carney, where possibly he can secure a majority government in the most underhanded way possible with all the floor crossers. And then I believe on the 14th of next month is the second opportunity for the First Nations to kind of stop the votes from or signatures from going forward. So 3 big dates next month. Hopefully Alberta independence comes out on top of all that.
And it will. However, we are also starting to see that they're ramping up the other side and the harassment side and the protesters against Alberta independence. And they're getting more and more, I don't want to say full-on violent, but annoying at least.
Yeah, they're definitely getting more annoying. And there's more national articles coming out saying a lot of national Canadians believe that the federal government should be negotiating with Alberta so they don't separate. I don't necessarily believe in a negotiation. I think it's gone too far, and anything they try to give in a negotiation is just a ploy to keep Alberta before they take their money in more remittance payments later on.
But from Petrina, quote, this person looks like a winner, harassed our canvassers by a Richmond pub, Southwest Calgary. On Thursday, he poked our canvasser in the chest and got into his face repeatedly. Harassment of elections Alberta canvassers is illegal. We will hold you accountable. And it's been a few weeks now that we continue to see these kinds of stories popping up from Marty up north, but from other canvassers as well. And we do continue to say, bring a camera or film with your phone, and if you can, be with someone else as well.
Yeah, these things, although they're really bad in the moment and they can get heated, if you can get these things on camera, they absolutely help the movement. It helps to set the narrative. And when the national media comes out and tries to set an alternative narrative, we should have a plethora of old videos of being harassed and what it was like to even try to get this petition off of the ground.
But also we see here from Rebel News, quote, by-election battle plan, join my third-party campaign group to fight Mark Carney. Do you want me to play it or read it?
We'll play it in just a moment. Let's talk a little bit about this. I didn't realize the by-elections were coming up so quickly here, and all 3 are going to be held at the same time. If he gets all 3 of these, he has a majority government. If he gets 2, potentially he only needs 1 more floor crosser he can buy off. And it looks, by the looks of the last floor crosser and a lot of the money that's being funneled to her husband, he's just buying these politicians off in the most crooked way possible. I'm glad Rebel News is trying to mount something against Mark Carney, get into majority government, but I don't have a lot of hope because all 3 of these are heavy liberal ridings.
It's official. 3 elections are coming in Canada, and I've got a plan for them. Mark Carney has called 3 by-elections for April 13th. 2 in Toronto and 1 near Montreal. He hopes to get a majority government so he can ram through whatever he wants. By the way, that includes new censorship laws. Now, as you know, Carney has been bribing Conservative and NDP members of Parliament to cross the floor to become Liberals. So he's almost there. I want to warn voters in these by-elections about what would happen if Carney is able to sneak his way to a majority. But I have been told by Elections Canada, if we broadcast that message to the voters in these ridings, we could be charged with illegal campaigning. Now, they won't stop the Chinese Communist Party from interfering in our elections, but they're threatening to target Rebel News. Even though we're Canadian journalists, the same as the pro-Carney journalists at the CBC and the Toronto Star and elsewhere. Now, Elections Canada did this to me once before. A few years ago, I wrote a book called The Libranos, where I exposed Trudeau's corruption. Now, there were 24 books about Trudeau in that same election.
Pause it for a quick second. We're going to continue to play some of this, but Rebel News has been the target of the Liberal government many times in the past, and they have taken this all the way through the court system. So they're not somebody that's just going to roll over. It's good to see somebody trying to campaign against Mark Carney, because I'm sure Carney is putting a lot of money into these by-elections.
Only one investigated by the government. Here's the Elections Canada police telling me in my interrogation that I actually had to register my book with the government.
When you are planning the book.
Okay, you can leave it there. And once again, it's good to see somebody pushing back. I hope more people in independent media kind of step up before the 12th and start talking about this. I know when we get to the Canadian National section, we're going to talk a little bit about it today, but as this ramps up, I'm going to talk more and more about it. The big problem is I don't think we have much of a following in these particular liberal ridings. It's going to be very hard to crack that shell.
And I mean, like Rebel News or not, or if you like Ezra or not, they now have amassed a certain amount of ability to go against a lot of the attacks that we're seeing from the federal government. A lot of more independent journalists or content creators are almost kind of lone fish by themselves. So, and they don't have the machinery or the knowledge behind them to actually go fight against this. But just positing the idea of going and doing something about these by-elections, even if it is pretty soon now, in about 20 days, I think is an honorable and useful thing to do.
Well, I had a viewer ask last time, how much money am I willing to bet on Alberta independence? And I said, I believe Alberta independence is going to go through, but it's not always about winning the cause. When this particular Liberal election, I don't know if we're going to win, but you still have to fight the good fight and you have to do what's right. And just allowing Mark Carney to run us over, get that majority government. Also kind of game planning and preparing if Carney does get a majority government. We've already been doing that. And I said the first thing that he's going to roll in is mass censorship. He has 3 more bills ready to go. He's already passed one. And the target of those mass censorship bills is going to be the Alberta independence movement. So it's going to become very important for channels like ours that are broadcasting from outside the country that will be able to still speak our message without threat of arrest. We see what's happening in the UK. Literally, tens of thousands of people have been arrested for spewing hate speech online, which is just normal speech that the government just doesn't want to hear.
And they've already tried to connect the Alberta independence movement, even from almost its latest inception, because it's been going on since about 1905. But in the latest iteration that we're seeing now, they've tried to start concocting the narrative, even from the beginning, that it's a white supremacist movement, a white Christian nationalist movement, a racist movement, et cetera, et cetera. And now they're also using and have the support of the chiefs from First Nations. So I wouldn't doubt that they would continue to go down that narrative once they are able to implement these hate speech laws and start charging people specifically because of that, because it's hate speech to say you want to separate from Canada.
Yeah, so I've talked about the national government's strategy and even national conservative strategy, whether that was Pierre Poilievre, Jason Kenney, or to some degree Danielle Smith. They're focusing everything around economics. So they can say economics is the issue for Alberta people that want to separate. That's not the case. It's actually cultural issues at the root of the problem. But if they can frame it in economics, they can throw a bunch of goodie bags like natural resource contracts and oil pipelines and said, we fixed it. We don't even need to have this vote anymore. What's the point of this? We're kind of dealing with what you're saying. The thing here is when they bring censorship laws in, they're not going to bring hate speech about talking about the economics because that's what they're framing it around. And they want to act like you can have free speech around Alberta independence. But it's the cultural issues. If you talk about immigration in the UK and the EU is one of the major platforms they're bringing hate speech under. So a lot of political parties aren't even allowed to talk about immigration when they're campaigning anymore.
But luckily, we're also seeing just quickly, and we're not doing geopolitics, but in Europe, that, for example, the AFD is trending positive, and a bunch of other more right-wing parties that are not afraid to talk about the disaster that has been immigration and multiculturalism have started to be able to speak up and have garnered a lot of support. So we are seeing an interesting, maybe positive shift that could also help with the conversation regarding Alberta independence.
We're seeing a massive shift in Europe, not just with the AFD in Germany, but France just had some big by-elections and massive rightward swing. They expected a little bit. They didn't expect the extent to which it's going in Central and South America as well. So maybe Pierre Poilievre will get a little bit of a rub from this. I mean, I don't think he's the savior of Canada. And even if he gets in, we need to see Alberta independence go forward to make permanent fixes, not temporary fixes for 4 or 8 years.
While the system still stays the same. And the unjustness of Alberta compared to all the rest of the provinces would continue to basically be the same, even if they say, no, we're going to fix it. They won't. It's not convenient to them.
Okay, let's go into the next post here. And maybe I'll mention one more time. We do have a companion for the show now, which is our X account. It's Nat and the Guy on X. And every single post and article that we frame on the show is on our X account. So if you can't watch the whole show, that is a great resource.
Yes, but from the National Post, quote, a firm majority of Canadians say they are open to reforming the House of Commons and Senate to meet separatist demands.
Yeah, and there's quite a few stories coming out on this now from mainstream sources, whether it's CTV or the National Post. They want to start framing this in, like I said, economics. We need to negotiate. The federal government is going to throw some things at Alberta so they can appease the national audience and saying these people are completely unreasonable. And then they're going to want to use censorship so we can't talk about the real cultural issues. And it's very important that we stay focused on the cultural issues as well as the economic issues. The cultural issues, it's what's going to sway a lot of people's opinion on a national level. The economic issues will sway people inside of Alberta. It's important that we start making a play for a lot of people that are fleeing the country. British Columbia had over 41,000 people leave just last year. There was no major push for Alberta independence at that time. If there was, like there is now, a lot of those people would have moved to Alberta rather than the United States, just to see if they could break free from Canada. A lot of these people did not want to leave. We were some of these people.
And by cultural issues, it's not just like the arts and the Calgary Stampede, but also what's going on in the education system in all of Canada, what's actually being taught, the stripping of parental rights, also very important, the inability for young people to be able to have a family or have even a life or have any kind of prospect for their future, not being able to buy a house, the rental prices also going through the roof. Everything that is talked about and the things that are prioritized by both the federal and provincial governments. So all the wokeness that we continue to see, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a compounding thing that if you go point by point, you could spend hours and days talking about the failures of Canada and how it's affecting Albertans specifically, but also the rest of Canadians.
Well, Mark Carney's going to have 3 shots at a majority government, whether he gets it in the by-election or he wins a couple by-elections, then gets a floor crosser. That's the second way, or he just calls another snap election. I mean, he's going to have 3 cracks at the apple here, and he's already indicated what he wants to do is start federalizing Canada. What that means, I mean, that sounds great on the surface to a lot of provinces. That means they're going to strip sovereignty away from individual provinces, and you're going to start losing your identity and losing your basic rights. In that most recent video we did about Alberta's culture, we started off kind of easy talking about the long-term investment in the Calgary Stampede and how Alberta won the World Cup, the bid for the World Cup of Hockey in 2028. But the second half of the videos were where we got into some real cultural issues about firearms rights and what do you want for firearms rights? What do you want for free speech? Because I thought free speech was ingrained in Western society and it was just part of the culture and we just assumed that. But I'm watching every single other Western culture turn their back on free speech right now, except for the United States. If Alberta breaks...
And that's only because it's also ingrained within their constitution as a fact.
Yeah.
That is not as easy and doesn't have a notwithstanding clause within it.
If Alberta breaks free, they need to put free speech in their constitution and they really need to realize this is a cultural must.
However, under that, I think this was a comment that you also highlighted and says, here's why that won't work, meaning appeasing the secessionists.
Yeah, so the last article we just talked about, if you forgot about, there's a national kind of sentiment that the national government should negotiate with Alberta independence individuals. It won't work. It's not a good idea. It's been going on for far too long, and it's just a ploy to trick you to stay with inside Canada. And let's just say Quebec's rights are here, Alberta's rights are here now. They're going to give you a goodie bag of stuff so you can bring yourself up to here. Quebec is then going to threaten to separate, and then that continues to go on and on.
Alberta, land of opportunity, economic strength, and fierce independence. Premier Danielle Smith champions the vision of a strong Alberta within a united Canada. Yet history consistently illustrates the difficulty of achieving such harmony. Is Alberta's strength best realized within Canada's federal framework, or does history suggest a different path? Alberta is Canada's economic powerhouse, fueling prosperity through its abundant natural resources, dynamic agriculture, and cutting-edge technology sectors. Yet historically, federal policies, including equalization payments and restrictive environmental legislation, have constrained Alberta, limiting its growth and undermining provincial autonomy. Consistently, Alberta has paid far more to the federal government than it has received in return.
And these are all issues we talk about on a daily basis. I know it's AI, but it's very concise. It puts it all together very quickly in an easy to understand format, especially with nationalists wanting to now negotiate with Alberta. It's important we don't get tricked into these negotiations.
Persistent economic imbalance fuels historical and ongoing dissent, challenging the feasibility of a truly strong Alberta within a united Canada. Repeated historical disappointments underline the challenges. The National Energy Program of the 1980s drained Alberta's economic vitality, constitutional reforms were rejected or ignored, and persistent calls for Senate reform remain unanswered. These examples demonstrate the fundamental difficulties in achieving Alberta's goals within the Canadian Federation. In light of this historical reality, Alberta faces two distinct choices. One, a strong Alberta within a united Canada, a compelling vision but historically marred by unfulfilled promises, federal resistance to meaningful provincial autonomy, and repeated disappointments. Two, full sovereignty, an independent Alberta, with complete control over its future, necessitating bold determination and strategic clarity. Pursuing sovereignty is legally complex, demanding clear public mandates and careful negotiation as outlined by Canada's Clarity Act. Importantly, the Act mandates good faith negotiations from all parties following a successful referendum.
Leave it there.
No party,
and
including...
like I said before, we do not... we can go into negotiations, but let's not kid ourselves. These negotiations are just a ploy to trick you to stay with Canada while they continue this 100 years of abusive relationship that's been going on.
And would they actually be willing to do what's best for Alberta? No, we've seen it because they haven't been willing to for the past... Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I know I did talk about Igor, and he was talking about he was meeting with some immigrants, and they're scared, and they told him he should not be standing up for Alberta independence because they think he'll be deported, and if they speak up, they'll be deported too. Although that is a very bad sign, they won't outwardly vote for Alberta independence. The fact that they have seen it in their own countries makes it very likely they're not even going to go out to vote. So it's not going to be an opposing vote, which is very good to kind of hear.
That too.
Yeah.
And then do you want to introduce this clip?
Oh, how long is the clip here?
13 minutes.
Yeah, why don't you just read the title in there? And we're not going to play the whole clip, but we are going to play the beginning here.
It's from Keith Wilson up from on Alberta Independence, Polyev on Joe Rogan, and The Injunction. So this was from 2 days ago.
Okay, good. Yeah, sorry. I have a camera right in front of my face, so I can't always see the article, so I don't know what you're talking about all the time.
The video.
Yeah, on this particular video, Keith Wilson did not expect Pierre Poilievre to come out like he did on Joe Rogan, and neither did I. I was very upset. If you watched our last show, almost the entire show was about that. We did a video on that. I went very hard at Poilievre. It's good to see other content creators finally coming around and going hard as well. It's a lot of the content creators that have already made the decision to leave the country. This is Viva Fry. He went hard at Poilievre and called them out for what it was, just like we did.
Mm-hmm.
So Pierre Poilievre went on Joe Rogan, and it didn't go like I thought it might have because, unfortunately, I suspect many of you have seen the clip. Rather than Mr. Poilievre recognizing the legitimate grievances and the harm that the federal Liberal policies over the last decade and more are doing to Alberta and the unfairness that we have in our present system towards Alberta, given our contribution to the economy, I didn't expect him to be as dismissive and almost belittling of Alberta's concerns, and so definitive in his mind that Alberta won't separate. Well, of course, he doesn't get to make that decision. You do. And that's why it's really important to sign the petition and to vote in the October 19th referendum. But one of the other things that it reminds us is that no one's coming to save us. We're on our own. And by that, I mean, it's clear we know the Carney Liberals are not going to change equalization.
And
but we also know...
And I know I say this every show, but I'm going to continue to say it because I'm starting to see other people kind of repeat it. And that is Keith Wilson has my vote for president of Alberta once it becomes an independent nation. He is the most trustable figure and he's extremely knowledgeable. I know he likes to say he's not qualified. In my opinion, his trustability anywhere he is lacking gives him a head and shoulders advantage over anybody else.
Reasonably can be concluded that nor is Poilievre and the Conservative Party. They have to cater to Quebec, to Eastern Canada, and to Ontario. But the provinces of Quebec and PEI, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, are all significant net recipients from equalization payments from Alberta. And so we have a situation in Alberta where we're paying all these taxes that we're supposed to get some benefit from, and instead, it's going to build a high-speed rail line between Ontario and Quebec. It's going to do other things that have no benefit to Albertans. So That's
you
one of
can
our
leave it
grievances,
there.
is that we're
And it was very interesting because Keith Wilson does have a YouTube channel that I watch on a regular basis, but he's a very busy guy. And so he'll post a video about every week or so. And he just posted one the night before. But after that Pierre Poilievre interview, he made sure he made another interview. I mean, I was glad when we posted our video because we were the, I think, first ones to get on Pierre Poilievre. Everybody else was praising him and saying what a great interview this was. This is going to change everything. I said exactly the opposite. If you haven't watched our video about Pierre Poilievre and that particular interview, I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud we kind of stuck our guns there. But Keith Wilson came out very quick, and so did Jeff Rath, saying this is not what we expected to hear. This is not what we wanted to hear. And I'm glad to see him now backing it up with more than just words.
But the thing is, maybe you were, maybe a lot of people were surprised that Pierre Poilievre took that stance, but for years now, since he got elected as the leader of the opposition, but also subsequently and consequently during the truckers' convoy and during whenever we had to talk about the mutilation of kids or trans stuff, he has always erred on the side of caution and safety. Of course, he is a federal politician and his interests lie with being able to take power and take a hold of the country. That is what any federal politician wants to do, that wants to be prime minister. But also seeing the behavior during, for example, the conservative convention that happened in Calgary, where they did not allow people that were supportive of the separatist movement, though all those inklings and all those little bits and pieces just came out to be exemplified on the Joe Rogan show. But I don't think people should be as surprised. And it is partly why we left, because I always thought, even if a conservative government gets in, even if they get a majority, it's going to take 10, 20, a whole generation to fix the actual issues that are happening in Canada. It's not going to be night and day difference.
Well, I didn't see anything like Alberta and independence coming, especially to the level it is, and the grassroots support it has. It has real hope for a lot of Canadians. A lot of Canadians, it's going to be called the Great Migration. A lot of conservatives and like-minded individuals are going to move to Alberta to support this Alberta independence movement. And I think this is something we should start to focus on as the summer comes and we submit these signatures. We need to have the next push, and the next push is tens of thousands of Canadians are leaving the country. And if they can afford it before they leave the country, try to immigrate to Alberta so you can support Alberta independence and a real opportunity to save, I don't want to say Canada, but save Alberta.
Yeah, save Alberta and yourself. But from Rise of Alberta, also, exactly, equalization will not be fixed by Carney. It will not be fixed by Poilievre. It will not be fixed by any party.
There's one more thing I wanted to say about Poilievre there. I almost forgot. And it was, I think a lot of people had a lot of hope in Pierre Poilievre, and so did I. That Joe Rogan interview was the last straw to me. I slowly been kind of waking up to the controlled opposition of what Pierre Poilievre potentially is. Joe Rogan interview just pushed me over the edge. That being said, I think it's because we had Aaron O'Toole, the Tool O'Toole, before Pierre Poilievre, and he was just literally a liberal. So when Pierre Poilievre came in there, he actually looked like a real conservative. But as time goes on, he's having to compromise a lot of his first principles. And now it seems like the national conservative line is, we got to do what's best for Canada. We need to align with Mark Carney.
And they have started. And we saw the narrative shift in the past 2 months. And for anybody not paying attention, now it should be even more than clear.
Well, and I think when they say we need to align with Mark Carney, and you can see Danielle Smith and Carney kind of coming together on natural resource contracts. And I think those are going to go through, and then they're going to say, this is what's best for Canada. We need to save Canada. If you align with Carney because he gives you a little bit of economic issues, you best believe he's going to drive Canada off not only an economic cliff, but he's going to drive it off an ideological cliff, and he's not going to compromise on ideology.
Well, and further into the hands of China, of course, as
definitely.
we continue to see. But it will not be fixed by any party that needs the votes of provinces benefiting from Alberta's losses. If Alberta wants a future built for Albertans, it has to be independent. And luckily, Alberta continues to have strayed far enough that people have realized how unfair the system and how unfair the setup of the Canadian government is, but don't forget about that.
Well, I know a lot of people don't like Donald Trump, but he knows how to take the gloves off when it comes to politics, and he is just a winner, and he does what it needs to be done in order to get the job done. Pierre Poilievre refuses to take the gloves off. What he did on Joe Rogan was a prime example of that. He wouldn't say a word bad about Carney. He had the opportunity about Trudeau. He played down every major issue, whether it was the opioid epidemic or any other issue.
Immigration. Oh, we're a multicultural country. We're built up by different nations is what makes Canada great.
Well, yeah, and my points to that entire spiel there is to say it's time for Alberta to take the gloves off and have more of a Donald Trump approach. It's time to stop being nice. Do not play down the issues. Do not let Canadian nationalists gaslight you that things are okay, that we just need a pipeline or we just need some natural resource contracts. No, we need a divorce. Things are not fixable. Like Professor Party said, Albertans do not love Canada anymore.
No one's coming to save us. We're on our own. And by that, I mean, it's clear we know the Carney Liberals are not going to change equalization. But we also know, reasonably, can be concluded, that nor is Poilievre and the Conservative Party. They have to cater to Quebec, to Eastern Canada, and to Ontario. But the provinces of Quebec and PEI, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, are all significant net recipients from equalization payments from Alberta. And so we have a situation in Alberta where we're paying all these taxes that we're supposed to get some benefit from, and instead, it's going to build a high-speed rail line between Ontario and Quebec.
And these high-speed rail lines, whether it's in the United States, Europe, or other places, these things represent massive amounts of corruption. You can look at the California high-speed rail. It's probably one of the most corrupt infrastructure projects that's ever been built in the United States. Billions upon billions is just disappearing into a black hole, and nothing is built.
And it's not even, I wouldn't even say now that it's Alberta has to divorce Canada. It's like Alberta has to break out from the insane asylum that is Canada, because both citizens and the federal politicians and the provincial politicians and all the other provinces have clearly lost their minds. And you're the only sane ones. So break out of the insane asylum and go live your lives properly.
Yeah, the only, there's so many things sit in National Canada that Albertans disagree with. And National Canada is here, Alberta is here, but National Canada wants to go even further this way. They want to federalize the entire system so they can pull every single province with them and take their sovereignty. Now is the time for independence. If it doesn't happen now, God forbid if it will ever happen, now is the time. There is massive support. This is probably the most support Alberta independence has ever had in the last 100 years. And there is a long history in Western Canada of independence movements.
Mm-hmm. But now I'll read some comments, otherwise we'll never get
I forgot
through
about
them.
comments. And thank you for everybody that has left comments. We have quite a large audience today. We try to read all the comments,
yes.
But if you do leave a super chat, we interrupt the show and we read that one immediately.
Yes.
Also, we have a companion to the show now, which is our X account. Every single post that you see within the show is posted there a day before.
Yes. Joe Rush says Igor is awesome. Yes.
Yeah, he's absolutely fantastic. I will say his videos are really, really long, even when he makes clips. If anybody knows Igor, ask him to post 1 or 2 minute clips. I would love to use them much more on the show.
Maybe we can try to contact him as well. Joe Rush says 31 watching, only 12 likes. Well, now it's 77 at least, according to this. So thank you so much to everybody watching. Smash that like button, people. Let's get the algorithm working for them. Thank you so much. And yes, every time you like or share the video, it really does help push it and the channel and us out to more people.
Well, yeah, and we do get quite a few subscribers sometimes on our lives. So if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe now, because our edited videos, we used to get subscribers from there as well, but we're taking on more educational topics that aren't, I guess, as trendy to larger audiences, but need to be kind of said.
Yeah. Or conversational topics. Wild Rose, hello, says there's only upside potential to dump the Canadian dollar from now until fall. Buy US dollars, not financial advice, at least not from us, but it's not looking good.
Normally my advice was always to buy gold or silver, but gold and silver have gone through the absolute roof recently. So I don't know if they're at their top or at their bottom or where they're at. Silver's taken a little bit of a dip recently, but...
And also continues, worst case scenario, again, not financial advice. You will just change your money back to loonies if Alberta doesn't make separation. Best case scenario, you make money on every exchange dollar. But the Canadian dollar continues to go insane as well.
Yeah.
The economy is just crazy, and they try to prop it up saying, oh, Canada's doing so great. No, it's not.
Well, we do have to realize this fact, and we do a lot of geopolitics. Trump is doing great with his economy, but a lot of people point to the weakened U.S. dollar. You have to realize he's trying to bring manufacturing back into the United States. With a strong U.S. dollar, it's not very effective to have manufacturing in the country. So I think they're going to have a controlled decline of the U.S. dollar, potentially even bringing in a secondary currency, whether it's a digital currency or something else, to have an internal dollar and an external dollar. This would benefit the United States for manufacturing and Trump's long-term vision. That being said, a J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio would have to win the next term for that to happen.
Hopefully a non-centralized digital currency.
Yeah, I'm not for digital currency at all. We're strongly against digital currency, digital ID, all of those things. That being said, if Trump does bring it in, at least hopefully he's going to leave the regular dollar and you kind of give you a choice whether you want to use it or not. I'm not for a lot of these countries that want, like Europe.
And Mexico now.
That want to bring in an all digital currency. Mexico won't be able to succeed with it.
Joe Rush says, I heard 6 countries is now doing business in Canadian dollars. Don't know if that's a fact or not, but that's what I heard. And then Wild Rose asks, which countries?
Yeah, I haven't heard that. If you got an article or something about that, feel free to send it to us, because I would like to see that as well.
Yes.
I did see something about Costa Rica, other than the Supreme Court justice getting arrested and extradited to the United States, that Canada is having some kind of international agreement with them. So maybe it has something to do with Canadian dollars.
Joe Rush also says, after Buddy was charged for misgendering his child, I would have left BC as well. We went and actually reported on all that with Billboard Chris, went to the court hearings, and that was insane. And at that point, yes, you might as well just leave. But also, if you're a parent and you're seeing that happen, you're seeing parental rights stripped away and the education system being just complete indoctrination centers, I would also strongly consider having left already.
Well, yeah, and then taking away even the right to homeschool. Yeah. They understand AI is coming in, and the schooling and education system is going to become something different. And I think in their vision, it's an indoctrination center, and they want every single parent to be forced to send their kids there. So no homeschooling will be allowed. This has already happened in a lot of countries within the EU. The UK is bringing it in. There's been rumors of Canada bringing it in as well.
Wild Rose says, literally couldn't care how illegal they make Pew Pew ownership. I'll never comply.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to do another video on that coming up. We talked a lot about it in our cultural video, that firearms are not only a right, but a cultural issue when it comes to many rural Canadians, especially Albertans.
Primorus 007, hello, says, good evening, Nat and Guy. Good evening. Just got back from my daily walk. Apparently, I can't see the chat on my phone. Republic of Alberta is the future, or die like Canada.
Exactly.
That's the only future.
Yeah.
And also says, hit the like. Thank you so much. And subscribe, folks. Your live watchers and subs are starting to move. Good work, Nat and Guy. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody that watches and has subscribed and has sent comments.
Yeah, and I want to say one of the big sentiments is just like they said, it's Alberta independence if you want to save Alberta, because Canada is going to fall off a cliff. That being said, the 12th of next month is a huge date, because I believe that's the date for the by-elections. All conservatives in Canada should be really watching that. If Carney gets a majority government, I'll have no respect for any conservative, even outside of Alberta, that doesn't support Alberta independence at that point. If you're telling me you're going to watch Mark Carney pay off politicians to cross the floor and then rig these by-elections, only to say, no, I'm willing to wait 3 more years for Pierre Poilievre. By the time Pierre Poilievre gets in, if he even gets in, because the system will be so rigged by then, Canada will be in an unrecoverable state. Alberta independence will be the only way forward for tens of thousands of Canadians across Canada, potentially after the 12th of next month.
And Joe Rush now listed the countries: Indonesia, Kenya, Bangladesh, Ecuador, the United Arab Emirates, and Vietnam.
I don't know if that's true. I like to see an article, because maybe they're closing natural resource contracts within Canadian dollars. Same thing is happening in India, within China, and within Russia. They're closing big sales in a natural resource, whether that's food, mining, or oil, in their own dollars rather than US dollars. So it wouldn't be that they're all kind of buying Canadian dollars up. It's they're just closing any sales from Canada and probably in Canadian dollars is my guess. If you have an article on that, I would love to see it. Let's read 2 more comments and then we'll go to
I'll read 3 more. Rage Against Machine says, thank you guys. Thank you for watching. Harmony Balance, hello, says, I made a comment on today's video. I haven't read it, but I will read it as soon as we finish. And Edward says, like and subscribe, and thank you so much.
Yeah, and I know we do a long show. It's a 3-hour show typically, and it's 3 times a week. I know I don't know any other content creators that do that when it comes to Alberta independence. That being said, it's going to be a long road until October 19th. So if you can stick with us and keep tuning in, it's really going to help us get information out there and kind of break the algorithm. There's going to be more and more censorship, especially after next month, if Mark Carney does get that majority.
Yes, but continuing on from Ryan Gertison, quote, and people wonder why companies aren't rushing to Canada to get a pipeline built. Northern Gateway president says they spent $600 million to get a pipeline approved, only to result in a no.
Well, yeah, and I really think they're rigging these natural resource contracts and pipeline contracts. They want to make sure Mark Carney's friends benefit.
For Northern Gateway, we spent over $600 million. And
10 years and $600 million to get a no.
right, we received approval from the federal government, but then it went into the Federal Court of Appeal and our permits were quashed because we still didn't have broad public support, and particularly on the coast. People thought there would be a major spill for sure, and it would devastate the coastline forever.
And we're going to finish watching this, but it's not that people thought. It's that Russia and China invested a lot of money into NGOs and lobbyists, so the federal government would hamstring itself with its legislation to not be able to access its natural resources. They took out their biggest competitor with a few $1 billion pumped into the system. We've talked about this for years.
Kept referring to the Exxon Valdez. The risk of a spill, we got the risk of that down to that would occur once in 15,000 years. Ultimately, we weren't able to convince people. For Northern Gateway, we spent...
And what makes you think that something similar wouldn't happen to a lot of the contracts maybe promised by the federal government to stop Alberta independence? They could be like, yeah, we're going to do this and build that, and then hamstring it all the way down with bureaucracy until it actually doesn't get built and doesn't get fulfilled. The promise never gets fulfilled, but it gets made.
Yeah, I think Mark Carney hasn't pushed those things through yet. Number one, he doesn't want to push them through. But number two, he wants to wait till Alberta independence gets further, and he wants to throw them all at the Alberta independence movement all at once to say, I've given you what you want. There's no reason to leave now. That's the card he wants to play.
And also this from Jack. I know a lot of you love Naneshi. Quote, Premier Smith would like security clearance, so she would potentially be able to look into foreign interference in Alberta, which we talked about and will continue to talk about that there is. Alberta NDP leader Naneshi is screaming, no, what is he hiding?
Yeah, and I don't know whether I agree with this or not. I've always liked Pierre Poilievre's line of, I don't want a national security clearance because I want to be able to talk about the issues. A lot of people may not know, if you do get a national security clearance as a politician, if they do give you a lot of information, they can say you're not allowed to talk about this in a public manner. So whether that's immigration or something else, that takes certain things off of the game board when you want to run a campaign. Yeah.
There wasn't a video, so just moving on. From Keith Wilson, quote, the Jay Treaty of 1794 recognizes the right of Indigenous peoples to cross the Canada-U.S. border freely, demonstrates that Indigenous mobility and rights can endure across international boundaries. It shows that Treaties 6, 7, and 8 can continue to be honored when Alberta becomes independent.
Yeah, no, whatever path we want to take forward, whether it's having no specialty groups or classes, or if they want to honor these treaties, or they want to continue the treaties with Canada and not be a part of Alberta, but just be located in Alberta, it does show one of the options, and that is these treaties can be transferred over if negotiations go well.
And also, as Keith Wilson says below, that he's replying to himself, this appears to be grift and fear-mongering, the whole First Nations thing. Why? Because no one is blocking First Nations consent. No one is disrespecting their treaty and traditional rights.
Well, yeah, this is capture of the elite class within the First Nations. That's obvious. That's obvious what's going on. That's why the first shot at Alberta independence is coming from the elites of the First Nations. I don't think this is organic whatsoever. They've been working hand in hand with the Liberal national government for well over a decade now, and they've been getting $1 billion payouts for it.
Mm-hmm. And similar to health-related topics and issues from the provincial government of Alberta lately, as we mentioned, the MAID program and them wanting to stop where are you going?
The restroom.
And then wanting to stop the ability for it to move forward as it has been. Well, the things I was introducing something, now I have to wait for him. So I'll just read your comments. Harmony also says, Onigor's video, another comment, everything is manipulated. Yes, of course. And especially with this topic, and I think it'll continue to get manipulated as we move forward. James, I'm just going to say James, says Keith Wilson will be on Unacceptable Fringe with Derek in about 15 minutes. If anybody is interested, you can then come watch us on replay if you want. We do have those chapter markers. And Harmony also says, Bob Mexican president or premier president wants digital. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's insane too. But question? It'll be hard. It's just a comment. But it'll be hard for them to actually institute it. The whole digital ID in Mexico.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did post we post all of our stuff on X, and that's going to be one of the stories coming up on RUMBLE. Yeah. We focus on all Alberta Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but when we go to the RUMBLE section, sometimes we put a lot of international politics in there, and there is a lot of things going on internationally right now. So,
but as I was saying, health-wise, Danielle Smith within the province of Alberta has been making some interesting changes. First to the MAID program, not wanting it to get even more insane than it is by allowing even teenagers, children, and or only those with mental health issues to unalive themselves via the government. But also regarding this from Juno News, quote, Alberta is closing substance consumption sites in Calgary and Lethbridge by the end of June, reinvesting in recovery-focused supports that connect people to treatments. People, addicts, will not be left without support.
And let's not fool ourselves here. We did a video recently talking about the homeless industrial complex, the drug industrial complex inside of Canada. And even though they're going to be changing their focus to rehabilitation, there is a huge grift going on there. There needs to be massive transparency, and these programs need to be reformed. So we make sure every dollar spent is a dollar that's really going towards recovery and not to line politicians and politicians' friends' pockets.
But again, I think one good step forward is to close a lot of those sites. I mean, we lived in Vancouver, where the whole program kind of started in the 90s, and it's just been tragedy after tragedy all the way since.
Yeah, and I will say this, Danielle Smith is doing a lot of good things. The problem is she can only go so far. Mm-hmm. So she can only push it so far within the legal framework of Canada and with the federal government standing over her. If Alberta gets its independence, you can completely get rid of the MAID program. You can really make sure there's transparency built into these programs so there is no corruption. You can make sure that the federal government of Alberta is confined to the kind of power and overreach that they do have.
Mm-hmm. So today, I am announcing that Alberta is ending the drug consumption services here in Calgary and in Lethbridge, and these sites will stop operating at the end of June. Government-funded funding will be reinvested in recovery-oriented supports that respond to overdoses, connect people directly to care, and steer them into treatment. People will not be left without support. This decision is also about taking pressure off the healthcare system. Leaving people in sustained addiction is not working for our health system and patients, families, and of course, even our frontline staff. When people are stuck in the revolving door of crisis, instead of getting real help, hospitals can become overwhelmed and ambulances tied up. By strengthening community outreach, withdrawal management, treatment pathways, we're making sure that people are getting the right care and, of course, in the right place. Decisions are being made based on evidence, capacity, and local community needs, and anyone struggling with addiction deserves a real chance.
Okay, you can leave it there. And this is the right direction for Alberta. So I do praise them on the direction they're going, but we got to make sure this grift doesn't continue, meaning they're simply changing models. Is the grift going to already be built in and they're already prepared for this transition? So they have their friends and family set up with auxiliary businesses to benefit from these contracts? I really hope not. And there needs to be transparency built in, not to just this grift, but so many grifts the Canadian national government and the Americans have as well. When Alberta gets its independence, radical transparency has to be at the base of everything.
But just regarding the safe injection sites that have propagated across Canada but started in Vancouver, it is still insane to me that they've seen that the experiment doesn't work. The crisis has gotten worse. Homelessness and mental health issues have gotten even worse. Mental illness has gotten worse. So why continue down that path?
They're not continuing now.
But the thing is, they've allowed it to fester and get big for so long that now a lot of people have just gotten accustomed to it. And that's the way that things work. And that's the best model that there is, which it's not true.
Well, what happened within British Columbia, and I was investigating this more and more from 2023 to recently in 2026, it was open drugs. You can do any drug you want, even the most hardcore drugs, and you can do them publicly, and nobody can tell you to stop. The police aren't allowed to tell you to stop. This is why Tim Hortons and McDonald's went absolutely downhill. There was literally people doing hardcore drugs at tables, and the cops wouldn't tell them to leave. That being said, they had that model set up for 3 years, and now they're going to this new model of recovery. Did they do the 3 years of absolutely destroying these provinces and countries? No. So then they would set up the grift over here to say, oh, now we're going to help everybody to recovery. But really what they're doing is setting up new government contracts to line people's pockets.
Who knows? But we were talking about Pierre and specifically about Viva Fry. If any of you know who he is a Canadian lawyer that got fed up, and he was really involved during the Freedom Convoy and was able to report. That's how we kind of knew who he was. And then he moved to the US because there was no saving Quebec. From Maxime Bernier, he says Pierre is a fake conservative. And yes, Viva Fry also spoke about it and said it sucked.
Well, yeah, I'm glad to see. I think other than us, Viva Fry was one of the first people to come out really hard, and he didn't caveat a lot of the things he said. He just came out and said them, and this is what he saw in that interview. We'll play the very beginning and then fast forward a little bit.
Well, that was one big, boring podcast that showed us absolutely nothing new about Pierre Poilievre.
Okay, fast forward it. 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Viva Fry, former Montreal. Expired student visas or fraudulent student visas crossing the border into the States, and lo and behold, these are people who are found on terror watch lists. There was one funny part of the interview where Joe Rogan says to Pierre Poilievre, this all sounds nice and reasonable. How the heck did you not win the election? And I could hear Hillary Clinton's shrill voice echoing through my head. You might be asking yourselves why I'm not up by 50 points. The question was asked to Pierre Poilievre, and his answer, wholly lackluster.
Well, that all sounds amazing. How the hell did you lose? How can a rational person vote for that? I mean, you're not saying anything.
Last election. It's not because he didn't have good policies. It's because he played the election badly, so badly to the point where I think he didn't actually want to win. He prefers to be a feckless opposition leader than an actual leader of Canada. Pierre talks about the cliched stuff, unleashing the economy, making better trade between America and the States, except he played that entire trump card entirely wrongly during the election, which might be why he lost that election.
So when you're campaigning,
you can leave it there. Yeah, and I highly recommend that video by Viva Fry. Other than us, he's the only other content creator that went that hard at Poilievre. And it's really, I'm noticing a similarity. It's the people that have already voted for independence and have already left Canada.
But also that have no loyalties to the Conservative Party.
Well, and they're not putting false hope into a leader that's probably not going to run for another 3 years. And Canada's going to be under the rule of a crazy far leftist for 3 years who's trying to literally destroy the country. Alberta independence is the only way at this point. If you haven't seen it and you're living somewhere else in Alberta, you're about to see it on the 12th of next month when Mark Carney gets that majority.
And because of a lot of the loyalties that other people that use microphones and cameras to talk, be them content creators or commentary people or independent journalists, unfortunately, they did also make some of their career, at least through Pierre Poilievre, through the Conservative Party, and through that support. So now it's not as easy to come and speak out about what's actually happening and have that willful blindness where you just defend without fully thinking or being, in my opinion, fully truthful with your followers.
Well, yeah, I talked about this a lot. Anybody that's watched our edited videos for a while knows we profile different content creators that support Alberta independence. That being said, it was a lot harder to find a lot of national content creators that do support Alberta independence. Because when I went to their channels, I would type in Alberta and nothing would come up. They would completely avoid the issue. And then I'd say, Well, what videos are popular on their channel? So I would go to the most popular videos, and indubitably it was Pierre Poilievre and national conservative messages that they made their national audience on. So now they're scared to speak up for Alberta independence. Even if you can kind of hear a lot of the sub issues they talk about, they should naturally be aligned with Alberta independence, but they're refusing to talk about it because they don't want to get ostracized by Poilievre or the National Conservative Party. One of these big channels is Northern Perspective. I kind of called them out last show too. This is a show that I have watched for a long time. They are a little bit milquetoast, but I do like to see what the National Conservative kind of messaging is. The problem is they had their nose so up Pierre Poilievre's arse when they talked about that Joe Rogan interview. It was completely one side and biased.
Well, and I've said it also before, but if you live in any other province, it is kind of your last hope. So I do understand wanting to hold on to and grasp that last hope. And that when he came up initially, and when he came up as the new leader of the Conservative Party, it seemed like hopeful. It seemed like it could work, but he's proved throughout the years that he's just not that.
Well, this is why I think the 12th of next month is going to be so fascinating. If Mark Carney actually grabs a majority government in these by-elections, and all these national conservative commentators within Canada that don't want to talk about Alberta independence try to stick with Pierre Poilievre for 3 years where Canada gets destroyed and avoid the Alberta independence issue and never really come around to it, they're fake conservatives at their heart that don't really want change.
They want to continue to live in the insanity that is Canada.
They're just going to be controlled opposition at that point.
But also, was that one supposed to be here?
Yeah.
Okay. From Ryan Gertison, quote, "They are telling people in Australia to drive slower to work and from home and to avoid air travel."
Yeah. And before we play this video, I'll say Alberta's in a very similar situation here. You produce a lot of the oil. Australia has a ton of oil. They shouldn't be in this predicament. And the federal government is telling them to drive slower and not leave their house as much.
Because they shipped a bunch of that oil to Canada.
Well, what I'm trying to say is the same thing could happen to Alberta if Alberta doesn't get its independence, because the national government is trying to have the same kind of controlling regulations over Australia as they are in Canada.
Is a real possibility now. The world's energy watchdog has issued a global warning that the war in the Middle East is creating a major energy crisis, and it's now urging Australia to act immediately. The International Energy Agency is advising us to work from home, to drive slower and to avoid air travel, much like we did during the pandemic, describing the current situation as the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Now, we are, of course, already seeing higher petrol prices at the pump, and we're now...
The largest disruption? You are a exporter of natural resources like oil and natural gas, and so is Alberta. These are places the price shouldn't be going up, but is, and they're using this as an excuse, and it's failed federal policies in Australia as well as Canada.
Starting to see those flow-on effects into the travel industry, with major travel operators, including the airlines, start to hike their prices up. And there are now wider concerns in the tourism industry that people will stop booking holidays and trips due to a combination of those higher costs and wider fears and uncertainty about what is going on in the world. This is a real possibility.
And that's the thing. They, in my opinion, they maybe do want this to continue because of their poor mismanagement. It gives them a great out and a great thing to blame. Oh, what's happening in the Middle East? But it's actually mismanagement and misappropriation of their own resources.
Well, a lot of the policies they wanted to bring in on a global level, Trump really pushed back against. But this war in Iran is pushing oil prices up and allowing them to achieve a lot of their goals. Even if it's not Trump trying to achieve these goals, it's a lot of people that are kind of against Trump, but he's kind of allowing them an in for their long-term strategies.
Moving on. Speaking to young people again, from Jeff Rath, quote, "Alberta students would pay close to $140,000 for a 4-year engineering degree at the University of Toronto. Scholarships for Indians at University of Toronto is just another example of Carney screwing Albertans. I wonder if Carney plans to give them citizenship along with the scholarship."
Well, and he's talking about Indians from India, not First Nations here. This is absolutely ridiculous. Why are they getting scholarships? Every single Canadian citizen should have a scholarship before you start giving scholarships to foreigners. Thanks for Jeff Rath to pointing this out. This is absolutely a bridge too far.
This was because from Jay Jen an excerpt, quote, Mark Carney just announced $25 million to hand over 220 students from India scholarships worth a jaw-dropping $113,000 each at the University of Toronto.
God.
There's no video.
Yes. And I think the next article may be related. I'm not sure.
Don't think so. From Keith Wilson, quote, if Alberta does not achieve independence through the October 19 referendum, many more high-income taxpayers and job creators will be leaving in even larger numbers. From the official record, quote, those who can leave Canada are leaving. The rest will pay the price. The Bank of Canada just confirmed it because it says that.
Okay, go back to the top there. And what we see here is Keith Wilson saying October 19th, a lot of Albertans are going to leave the country. Leave this on, please. A lot of Albertans are going to leave the country on October 19th. And I believe that...
Well, if the referendum doesn't go through on October 19th. Continue.
Okay. Now I forgot what I say. You can continue to go.
Well, that was it then.
Okay, go back to that. So on October 19th, a lot of Albertans are going to leave the country if this referendum doesn't go through. There could potentially be a monkey wrench thrown into this thing where they say we have to have another vote because the first vote wasn't clear because there was too many conflicting questions. So what I will say to Albertans, if it doesn't go through on the 19th, but there's going to be a secondary referendum, stick it out. But next month on the 12th, again, is Mark Carney's majority government. And this might not affect Albertans as much, but national Canadians are going to start making plans to leave the country on the 12th of next month if Carney gets that majority. We need to make an effort as Albertans and as the Alberta independence movement to kind of tell these people, come to Alberta if you want to vote for Alberta independence and you've lost hope in Canada because Mark Carney has a majority government now.
But even then, even after the 12th, he could just pay someone else off to be a floor crosser. We've seen there's a lot of people that are willing to do that.
Well, and that's what I said the secondary and third option was. The secondary option was if he doesn't win all three by-elections and he only wins two, that means he only has to pay off one floor crosser. We know he has the ability to do that. He's done it time and time again. And the third option is the snap election. I'm sure he doesn't want to go to that, and I'm sure he's probably not going to go to that. Go to that, even though his poll numbers are high. Economically, he has not performed in the way he has promised Canadians.
Should I read some comments?
Yeah, let's read some comments.
They're stacking up.
They're
Thank
stacking
you so
up.
much. From Harmony says Canadian dollars should not be at the value it is. And also says unschooling is, I feel, imperative, and I agree there with you, and or homeschooling and being able to teach your kids the way you want to teach them and actually actual knowledge that is valuable for them throughout their lives, not just sticking them in a school, not seeing them for 8 hours and then expecting them to come out fine.
Well, yeah, and let's talk a little bit about the Canadian dollar. A lot of people think it's doing a lot more strong than expected. The only reason it's doing that strong is Trump intentionally wants to bring the American dollar down because that's what benefits a nation that wants to manufacture. There are a lot of manufacturing sites in the United States that has already been built. A lot of people said it would take 10 years. Trump said, nay, it's not going to take 10 years. You can write off all your tax write-offs for the next 10 years within the first two if you can get the facility built. And a lot of people have got the facility built. So manufacturing is flooding to the United States right now, but he intentionally needs to bring that dollar down so it's going to be easier to export a lot of these goods.
Joe Rush says True North Dispatch is where he saw the switch to the Canadian dollar.
Oh, what was it?
True North Dispatch.
Oh, okay.
I love it when you don't listen to me.
I always listen to you. What are you talking about?
Lyle Norman says, love the show, but Keith Wilson is on the fringe at 7. That's okay. Let us know how he does. We'll probably still be here by the time it ends.
I didn't know he was going to be on the fringe tonight. I'm definitely going to watch it immediately after the show. Hopefully, like Keith Wilson does a lot of good interviews. Sometimes he goes on Milquetoast Interviewers. Fringe usually isn't one of those interviewers. So I hope he really asks some good questions, and I completely expect him to do so because he's so knowledgeable about Alberta independence. I think he's going to know the right questions to kind of ask Keith Wilson.
Wolverine says Quebec must take all the East. They will kneel. I mean, they'll continue to kneel.
And before anybody else goes to the fringe, please subscribe. Please like the video. It kind of helps us get break the algorithm and get out there. We're a newer channel and we're just starting to grow.
Lyle Norman says, remember to hype the videos. Not sure if it works on streams. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a new feature that YouTube has. For some reason, it doesn't show up for me, but I think it's because we're in Mexico, but our videos can still be hyped outside of Mexico. So if you see that feature, do so if you can.
Well, no, the hype feature works for me, just not on our video, just not on our videos.
No, but it's not on my personal, like when I watch random videos and my account, I don't have that.
Once in a while it pops up for me, and then once in a while it doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marianne Sims says, so happy I found you two. Love your content and how you interact together. Thank you.
You should see us off camera when we film our edited videos.
When we debate a lot, and a lot of people think we're fighting, but that's just kind of how we talk.
Yeah. That's our love language is arguing and debating.
But in a nice way, Lyle Norman says, you guys have to come to Alberta's first inauguration. Love the show. And again, I am working, and we do want to work towards going.
Well, we really do want to come to Alberta, especially as it comes closer and closer. The big problem is going to be Mark Carney and his majority government and these massive censorship laws that he's bringing in. If he brings the same kind of laws, which it looks like he does, that the UK has, we're going to be criminals in our own country, and we're not welcome back at that point. So if Alberta gets its independence, I'll definitely be there. That being said, it's going to be crucially important for content creators outside of Canada to support Alberta independence.
Continue highlighting the issues.
Yeah, Glenn Beck is one of those creators. We're one of those creators. Why are those people so important? Because the censorship laws in Canada haven't taken full effect yet. When they do, they may start arresting content creators like they did in the UK.
And I mean, hopefully not, but we have seen, there's precedent from the UK. Canada's part of that Commonwealth too. And in Australia, they've attempted to do that too.
Yeah, not just in the UK, but the EU is a big offender of this as well.
And now I'll read some from RUMBLE. We're also simul streaming on rumble.com. So if YouTube censors whatever comment you want to send, you can send it on RUMBLE. KP for you, hello, says, I'm late, lol. I'll watch from the beginning tomorrow. Thank you so much. And as I always say, we're not at school. I don't take attendance.
Yeah, and again, if you do miss the beginning or you can only watch part of the show, we do have a companion to the show now, which is our X account. Every single post that we talk about on the show or article we talk about, I do put it on our X. I try to do it the day before, or at least the afternoon before we go on, so you'll know everything we're talking about.
And Christu, hello, says, Alberta Independence. Good evening, dears. Just finished a Zoom meeting with SFA and Mitch. Let's go.
Fantastic. Yeah. And there is huge grassroots support right now. I know there was a big convoy that kind of went through rural Canada, and all the big creators for Alberta independence were there, and it was good to see.
Also says, I feel for you if you had to watch the whole Pierre Poilievre sit down with Rogan. Yeah. Thank you.
I liked watching it, and I like watching things that I hate and that I yell at the screen over. I watch a lot of liberal content as well. So I know their talking points, and I know where they're coming from. I know their arguments. I know what their first principles are. But again, I'm one of those people that yell at the TV and debate the TV, even though the TV doesn't always debate back.
Or he starts debating me and telling me to kind of take the other position, which I don't have, so I just ignore him. Usually I'm editing and doing other things that are important.
Yeah, right here is this is our living room, and this is our studio. And then over there we have a dining room table, and that's usually where she edits from. So we usually argue back and forth from there.
Christus says, Keith Wilson for president of Alberta. And again, you want someone in power that doesn't want to be in power. That is the best kind of leadership. The ones that are not doing it for the power, but for the betterment of their citizenry.
Yeah, and that's Keith Wilson, because he said multiple times he does not want that position. We're going to have to twist his arm and hopefully get him to accept it.
KP4U says, Pierre had Rogan in the first 20 minutes. His slimy serpent-like politician talk. He's just, and again, yeah, I agree. He's just a politician. And I think a lot of people wanted to see something different, but he revealed himself to be so.
Well, Joe Rogan and Trump have been butting heads a little bit. I think Joe Rogan was more knowledgeable on a lot of these issues than he let on, and he didn't push back in any way, shape, or form on Poilievre. When Poilievre talked about tariffs, that the United States have to take them down, I don't know why Rogan didn't bring up the fact that Canada has had tariffs on the United States for decades, and that's how they maintain a lot of their monopolies. And any number of issues, I just wish Joe would have pushed back a little bit more, and he usually does on a lot of other guests. He pushed back on Steve-O the other day. I wish he would have done the same thing with Poilievre.
Yep. I'll just read 3 more and then we'll go.
Okay.
Troglodyte Hello says, Gur just got the notification. Yeah, again, YouTube doesn't love us or what we talk about, so Usually we do start the show at around this time, whenever this time is for you when we started, that time we start at. It's confusing because Mexico has a different time zone, so if we say a time, then it's wrong in certain dates, etc. But thank you. And Sean, hello Sean, says, been watching Viva since he did fun things with the Rip the Line he shows in the start of his video. He's actually quite funny and fully bilingual.
Yeah, I really like Viva a lot. And Robert Barnes, I've learned to absolutely love. He's a constitutional attorney, and he typically makes a big show with Viva every Sunday where they go over the big constitutional issues in the United States. The United States has a huge effect on Canada and Alberta. So if you're going to watch only one show a week, I would say the Sunday show with Viva and Barnes is probably the best if you want to know the constitutional U.S. issues going on right now.
And they're both lawyers.
Yeah.
And Troglodyte says, Viva was People's Party of Canada. He sees who they are. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's why he's not afraid to come out and actually say things. From Bob Zimmer, quote, watch Ken weld iron ore rock at purity levels 66 to 71%. This is one of the purest iron ore deposits in the world, and it's right here in Canada. Along with this amazing resource, Ken has a good high-paying job and a good life right here in Canada.
Yeah, and I used to work in mining. The mining industry in Canada in general is extremely underdeveloped because they don't get the contracts and there's so much red tape in the way. This is one of the big industries I think Alberta needs to really invest in when they become their own independent country. It's a way where a lot of these mineral prices aren't going to fluctuate as much. They should only go up over time because the world needs more and more minerals. Oil prices tend to fluctuate. This is a very, very good way to diversify your economy. Also, it gives you the natural resources for manufacturing that you need, so you can have beginning to end manufacturing from getting the ore out of the ground to making the final product.
Hey everybody, we're in Baffinland Iron Mines, and this is some of the iron ore you've heard so much about. It's 66 to 71% pure iron. I've always heard that you can even weld this stuff. Well, Ken is here to show whether you can weld it or not. So Ken, here we go.
All right. Try and get the stick here. Yeah. It looks good.
There it is.
There you go.
There it is. Welded steel to that iron ore. And there's proof of it right there. There's the weld. So how long have you worked for Baffinland?
Since 2018.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And absolutely fantastic. A lot of the minerals in the ground within Alberta, within the Rocky Mountains. I used to work in BC when I worked in mining, but it's really one of the big untapped resources. I know they have mines, but they don't have it to the level that they should. I just can't believe Canada is in the financial dire straits that it's in when it has so much oil resources. But even more than that, it could have the most mining resources in the world.
And it sold a bunch of them to China as well.
Well, yeah, China owns all the mining companies in Canada. It says made in Canada, but I used to work for these companies. They've been completely bought out by the Chinese federal government,
Communist Party.
Chinese Communist Party. And then they lobbied the Canadian government to change a lot of the mining rules so they can hire in Chinese workers and undercut mining union members within Canada.
Moving on from Western Standard, quote, Alberta moves to fast track major project approvals with a 120-day timeline.
Yeah, this is still, that's 1, 2, 3. That's still 4 months after the federal government approves it, which is years. I mean, I would like to see this. It should be no more than a 30-day fast track. By the time the federal government approves it, you should already know the ins and outs of the project and say yes or no. And I would say a lot of these companies go to Alberta first before they go to the federal government. So Alberta should create a pre-approval process. So after the federal government approves it, literally within weeks, that approval should take place.
Moving on from John Alberta Patriot, and we highlighted him recently as well as a content creator to watch because he does great interviews on the street with actual Albertans, both positive and negative, and seeing how it is on the ground, especially for people that might not be in Alberta at the moment or even anymore. But he says, quote, if you live in Alberta and own firearms, this is your wake-up call. Gun owners across Canada have already been warned by the RCMP to turn in their firearms. Not debated, not voted on, not approved by the people. It was pushed through without meaningful democratic input. And what are they offering in return? Pennies on the dollar for property you legally purchased, a fraction of what your firearms are actually worth. They said it would stop here. They always say that. Every time government restrict gun rights, they promise this is as far as they'll go. And every time, a few years later, they go further. And it gets more expensive, actually, to continue with those buyback programs. Next, it's going to be handguns, then semi-automatics, hunting rifles, restrictions so tight you can barely use what's left.
Okay, and you can kind of leave it there. But if you are a firearms owner in Alberta and you're thinking about sitting this vote out for Alberta independence, they're going to come for your guns, and then you're going to wish you had voted yes for independence. There are so many, in a federal election, they say, are you a one issue voter? And there's so many major issues that the federal government is diverging from Alberta independence on. I think, I don't see how you get less than a 60% vote on this thing. Because the people that are going to vote to stay part of Canada, a lot of those people aren't motivated to come out to the polls anyway. What major issue are you saying you want to be part of Canada, that Canada is going to do better than Alberta is on its own?
Exactly. But we were talking about how Canada does not know how to manage, or doesn't want to, honestly, manage its own resources. From Wealth Move's quote, the $150 billion Canada lost. This map shows over a dozen massive energy projects in Canada that were officially cancelled or shelved between 2015 and 2020. These weren't just ideas, they were multi-billion-dollar investment plans, thousands of jobs, and future tax revenue that simply evaporated, and yet they continue to rely on Alberta.
Not most of them, but a lot of these projects, especially the pipeline projects, were all going through Alberta, whether it was going from Alberta to the Northwest Territories, Alberta all the way to the East Coast, Alberta all the way to the West Coast. I mean, if they would have started a lot of these projects when they initially wanted to, they would have been coming online now. And we see the state of energy in the world. Canada would have been one of the richest countries if they just approved these basic projects. And a lot of people don't know, but oil pipelines are the safest way to transport oil.
And not only one of the safest countries, but one country that others would rely upon, which right now Canada doesn't have much to offer the world.
No, all it has is pipelines to the United States, so it has only one customer, so it has to sell at a discounted rate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's read more comments.
Okay, let's get into some more comments.
John Nadalek says, another great show, you two. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
And yeah, one more thing. If you do go on our X account and you have any comments on any of the stories, kind of leave them there. Our X account works different than a lot of other people's. We just literally put the show date that the source is kind of for, and then we have like 50 different articles for that show.
Yes. Harmony Balance, but thank you so much, Dawn. Harmony says, does the government really understand or comprehend transformation? No. Does the government?
Well, yeah, it completely does. It understands how to transform the country of Canada into an absolute pile of shite.
Also says, does the government really want empowered citizens? No, because that completely threatens their power. That's what they don't want. That's why they continue to try to both control and subvert their citizenry. We're seeing it with the gun grab, but we've seen it forever. Well, I was going to give a timeline, but always.
This is why you're having this great replacement of bringing immigrants into the country. They're easily molded, easily indoctrinated. It's a voting bloc that they can actually get to vote for these far left policies. Anybody that's lived in Canada for multiple generations isn't going to vote for a lot of these policies because they know it's going to destroy the country for the future of their children and their grandchildren.
Republic of Alberta says they shipped it to Laurentian Canada. The East refuses to buy anything from Alberta, and yet they benefit a lot from the equalization payments from it. So
yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And the way Quebec does its books, it should not be able to get those kind of equalization payments. There's a lot of things on the books they don't declare as assets, which other provinces would normally have to do. So it makes their equalization payment go even higher. And they have all kinds of natural resources in Quebec. They're natural resource heavy, whether it's oil or natural gas. They refuse to drill and kind of get it out of the ground because they would rather live off of remittance payments.
Mm-hmm. Dale Bilver says, I really don't think Canada will make it for 3 years if Carney gets a majority. I mean, it won't, but he will, unfortunately.
Well, no, it won't. And this is really, this is the shining moment, I think, in Canada. And I was really against Carney getting a majority government. I said, vote for Pierre Poilievre reluctantly if there's a snap election. It looks like there won't even be a snap election. Carney's going to get a majority government. What this is going to make conservatives on a national level consider is, can we even afford to wait for 3 more years? Canada is going to be done. It's going to be done in the next year. Alberta independence is a real option to fix things overnight. A migration of conservatives, like-minded conservatives that agree Alberta independence is the only way forward, because they cannot wait 3 more years for another election, because Canada will be gone by then. That needs to be the next push.
But even if Poilievre got a majority, he won't be able to reverse and legally reverse a lot of the things that have been put in the books for the next few years, I would say next few decades, or even a generation. So even if the Conservatives get in, you're not going to see a change. You're still going to be living under the country that was built by the Liberals, which is a dictatorship almost.
Things change overnight if you vote yes for Alberta independence and it goes through. Why? Because for the last 93 years, Alberta has voted conservative. This gives you a kind of consistency no other democratic nation has. The United States is extremely bipolar. I know there's talk of Alberta becoming the 51st state or Canada becoming the 51st state. No, that's not a good idea, because Gavin Newsom gets in or some other Liberal candidate gets in. You have the exact same problem you have in Canada right now. Alberta will really have consistency in its voting power, and it will be able to plan for its long-term future through natural resource development and manufacturing.
Troglodyte says Alberta pipeline could help reduce dependence on camel oil. Yeah, especially if it's done independently. Daryl Robinson, hello, says, hi, Nat and the guy. Poilievre disappointed me. The way he dismissed the petition was disgusting. Than to say he's an Albertan. Wow. And then he was a proud Albertan, and that he's Alberta through and through.
Well, he wants to slap you in the face by disregarding Alberta independence, and then he tries to shake your hand by saying Albertans are the most hardworking people. I mean, I called him out on that. I don't know who's worse. They're both Albertans. Carney claims to be an Albertan too, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then Pierre Poilievre has lived in Ottawa for how long? The only time he wants to live in Alberta is when he actually needs help. He comes begging, and we backed him up. And what did he do? Slapped every single Albertan in the face, and then tried to shake his hand and said, "Vote for me. I'm controlled opposition."
Harmony, thank you so much. Says excellent work, Nan and the guy. Thank you so much for all the compliments as well. I'm bad at taking them. Republic of Alberta says Eastern Canada buys Alberta oil through the Line 5 in the US. They're so nasty they refuse to buy anything directly from Alberta, so Alberta could profit. So Alberta can't profit,
Well, it's even more underhanded because they buy through that pipeline, but they refuse to give an approval to any other pipeline. Well, I almost think Quebec should be forced to drill for their own oil. Otherwise, they shouldn't be able to, number one, buy Alberta oil, or they shouldn't be able to get any kind of remittance payments. You should have to maximize your economy before you come begging for a handout. I'm actually a little bit sympathetic if there is a national government that, okay, there can be some kind of remittance payments, but in the billions of dollars when you're not even accessing natural resources that you have in your own province. No, it needs to stop.
Wolverine says Quebec EU is right. I mean, maybe you can push them off and they float over to that side. Harmony says, I don't listen to Northern Perspective. I find this channel too narrowed or biased.
Yeah, it's way too milquetoast, but I do like to know, like, oh God, there's another guy I was watching just before the show. He's a very national conservative party member. White Clayton as well. Him and Northern Perspective are very much the national conservative voice, the Pierre Poilievre voice. I find him very milquetoast, but I would listen to all opinions, and I somewhat agree with them, but not when it comes to Alberta independence, I'll tell you that.
Troglodyte says about Eastern Canada, there's something that rhymes with punts.
And 2 more comments, and then we'll go back into some posts.
No, because I got to read some from Mario and Billy. Republic of Alberta says Danielle Smith needs to drop her referendum question. She should not be interfering in a citizen-led initiative. Yes, but Keith Wilson did explain it. We played it last
Yeah, I'm not going to make any excuses. I tend to agree with you, but the one good point that Keith Wilson did bring up that we reviewed in the last show, we played almost the whole video, which was 15 minutes, which we rarely do. But Keith Wilson addressed the fact, how does the petition actually work the day of? When you go in, each individual question is going to be on a different ballot. The top ballot is going to be the Alberta independence question. So it's given priority on its own ballot, which I do like. I still don't like how it's muddy in the waters. Keith Wilson doesn't seem to think it's going to affect Alberta independence, but I'd rather have those other questions just not on a ballot on that day.
Mm-hmm.
And one question from our UMBLE, and then we'll get back into some posts.
Comment. Well, these are short. Christus says, so is the forestry, which is a joke. No wonder oil. No wonder all the wildfires. As a free Albertan, all I can say is come and get them.
Yeah, what I'm saying about the lumber industry within Canada, even if it's not cost effective, Alberta needs to develop that industry because it allows you to do everything internally and develop self-sufficiency for building homes or anything else.
And now let's give you more reasons to sign the petition and see what's happening in Canada.
Well, and if you haven't signed the petition, down in our, what do you call it?
Description.
Down in our description, there's a link to the
to statefreealberta.com, where to sign and how to sign.
She says it better than I do.
So let's give you more reasons to go sign as quick as possible. Yes.
And this is where we cover national issues that very often affect Alberta independence in a big way.
Or encourage in many cases.
Yeah.
From Mark Nixon, quote, Doug Ford celebrates creating 1 million new jobs over the past 8 years in Ontario. Ontario saw 1.5 million new immigrants over the past 4 years alone. The math ain't mathing.
Well, yeah, and this doesn't make sense because you have so many immigrants coming in, yet you have no jobs for them. The only province that actually has a massive amount of jobs is Alberta. If Alberta stays part of Canada, the federal government is going to put massive amounts of immigrants in Alberta because you're the only province that has a functioning economy at this point.
To today's announcement, which will support our goal of expanding and modernizing Billy Bishop Airport. Our government will soon introduce legislation to take over the City of Toronto's role in the tripartite agreement that governs the airport's operations. And we will move to take ownership of the city-owned lands in the airport in exchange for fair compensation, so we can extend the runway to accommodate jet traffic, upgrade terminal building, and improve access to Toronto's waterfront.
Is it me or did he change his cadence?
Well, no, he's reading off.
I know he's reading, but he usually sounds different.
Well, no, because he usually talks and he doesn't read. He can't read very well. Neither can I, but...
Following consultation with Indigenous community partners in advance of construction, our government intends to declare Billy Bishop Airport a special economic zone to streamline approvals while maintaining strong safety and environmental protections. Our plan will help Billy Bishop Airport realize its full potential. It will
He just keeps saying Billy Bishop. Now, there's a point in one of these clips where he gets some TDS, so I just want to play this all the way through to see if this was one of those clips.
At Pearson International, increase competition and bring cheaper flights and options, more routes, and more convenience to the millions of people from across Ontario who use this airport every year.
Okay, there was another clip that was from that airport press conference where he got a bunch of TDS and he says, we're under attack from Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you're really going to continue to go with this line? You're under attack from Mark Carney, your best buddy, Mr. Ford.
And Carney really, really wants to unite and turn into China via the EU as well. So from Ryan Gertison, can't stand this narrative being pushed. A failed union tried to pull us into it. The EU or European Union is a failed experiment, and they push the same climate narrative as Carney because he helped them design it, stealing billions from citizens to satisfy it.
Well, and we're going to be doing a story probably sometime next week. We're supposed to film on Tuesday about Canada trying to become more and more a part of the EU. There's a narrative being put out there by mainstream media as well as EU politicians and Canadian politicians saying Canada needs to be part of the EU. It's absolutely ridiculous. The
US is right there.
The only region falling off a cliff even faster than Canada is the EU. And why are they falling off faster? Because they don't have natural resources. Canada has an out. They have a parachute they can pull at any time they want, which is their oil sector and their mining sector. Carney's just refusing to pull it at this point.
But today, I would say Canada is also in some ways particularly European because of the strategic interests and the common challenges we are facing. This is a very good day for the transatlantic relationship between Europe and Canada. We saw a very, very strong approval of this report, 482 votes in favor, that is 76%. And that
Is he a twin?
And that clearly shows that we have an overwhelming majority in this parliament that is understanding the seriousness of this moment right now and the necessity to work closer with our Canadian friends. Because what we are seeing really over the last couple of weeks and months is that Canada is perhaps, and I think you coined the phrase initially and Marcani is taking it up, that Canada is the perhaps most European country outside of Europe. And that is not only a matter of cultural connections, of course, some languages that we share, but also of the values that we share to democracy, rules-based order, fighting climate change. But today...
The closest to the EU because they've both effed up their countries to the point where it's unrescuable.
They're ideological globalists trying to build
So yes, in a way, it is very similar to the EU.
Trying to build a digital prison around humanity. This is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that Mark Carney, the EU, and the mainstream media are trying to push Canada to become part of the EU when the United States is right there. Not to become part of the United States, but that's your trading partner. That's who you want to do business with. That's how you maximize freedom. You don't want to maximize freedom, and that's the problem.
Say Canada is also in some ways particularly European because of the strategic interests and the common challenges we are facing. Canadians and Europeans know full well that the only way to defend our interests and safeguard our interests, whether that be in the Arctic, in Ukraine, with regards to climate change, with regards to trade, etc.
Oh, and that just makes me grit my teeth and just want to like, oh God. And because I was gathering the stories for the video we're going to do about making Canada part of the EU, and it's absolutely ridiculous. They're taking fake polling numbers saying 40 and 50% of Canadians want to be part of the EU. And again, vote for Alberta independence unless you want to become part of the EU, because that's what they're pressing for.
That too. But also, Maxime Bernier here with good opinion says, quote, international students shouldn't be allowed to work. I, as an international student, when I came to Vancouver, Canada, I was surprised that we were allowed to work at least a little bit. But now that it's being turned into a huge grift for the government, and the government continues to allow it.
Yeah, but they're getting this article is actually supposed to go with the national scholarship articles they're giving Indians. I moved it down by accident. I'm sorry if the clip's a little bit hard to understand, but he's describing it in his own words.
They're supposed to come here to study, aren't they? And yes, Tanya Sharma brags about scamming his way to 5 government jobs as an international student, HR at the Department of Defense. Now he runs a business teaching others how to do the same.
Well, and this is the big problem. 1 out of every 4 people that live in Canada are employed by the federal government. And who are they employing? They're bringing immigrants in and they're giving them these well-paying jobs. And there's the whole system's kind of laid out right here.
This is how I landed 5 government jobs as an international student without having PR or citizenship in Canada. See, I came to Canada back in 2017. I was 18 years old with absolutely zero work experience. But still, I was able to land 5 government jobs with all these departments. And one of these departments is National Defense, where I was working as an HR recruiter. And let me tell you, there are only 3 ways if you want to get into government job. And I've divided it into 3 parts: students, recent graduates, and people who want to switch from private to public sector. So if you're a student, go to Google and type in FSWAP, which is Federal Student Work Experience Program. This program allows you to work during your summer as a full-time intern with public sector. And if you do a great job, they can also hire you as a part-time when you go back to your school during fall or winter semester. And a lot of times, if they have budget and you do a great job, they can also rehire you once you finish your studies. One of our students, Ramandeep, actually did this and went from working at Dollarama to 2 government jobs within a couple of months. Second, if you're a recent graduate here in Canada, then you should go
working 2 government jobs, double dipping.
On Google and type in jobs.dc.ca, and you will come across a lot of opportunities for recent graduates that you can apply for. Plus, you can also go on Google and type in informal Facebook groups, and now you'll be able to find the networking groups where you can connect with hiring managers directly and see if they have an open opportunity. I personally did this and landed 3 of my government job out of 5 using Facebook groups. It still blows my mind, but it actually works. And lastly, for people who are currently working in private sector and they want to switch to public sector, then I would recommend going for provincial jobs rather than federal jobs. And here are all the websites for provincial.
And obviously that's an educational video, and it's not meant for a news show like this to expose. It's meant for other immigrants coming into Canada that they're trying to recruit into this pipeline. And these are some of the best paying jobs, and they're secure government jobs. These should be going to Canadians, not people on PR, not immigrants, Canadians.
But also, I mean, the bloatedness of the federal and provincial governments and how many people, 1 in 4, are working for them, but then think that it's not even Canadians that are having those jobs because also of the HR, he was HR, the Department of Defense, the Secretary of Defense, or whatever it's called. But because of the HR policies that they've put forth with diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're way more likely to want to hire someone from elsewhere, an international student, than a local. And now he's helping a lot of these people, but who knows if they have the actual qualifications. We also have seen the grift that is the international students, especially from India, but elsewhere, that get to Canada, have a work permit, and when they go to school, it's not an actual school. It's like somewhere in a shopping mall, or they don't even have classes, but now they have the study permit, and they're getting jobs through that.
Well, they want to increase the population of Canada up to 100 million. They obviously want to create a pipeline to get these people into government jobs, get them indebted, give them scholarships. I mean, you name it. They want to create new voting blocks. Canada only had a 30 million population just a short few years ago. Now it's at 40 million. If they can literally double that, they can make the voting block. If they can have the censorship and the indoctrination, they're going to create a whole new voting block so they can make the country that they want.
Mm-hmm. And we have been giving a lot of updates on that veteran that went to walk in the woods in Nova Scotia and got a $28,000 fine. And now he's made international news from
it's important that not only he makes international news, but this story makes international news so they don't come back with this idea of climate lockdowns.
Because it's insane. He made international news Jeff Evely made international news regarding his court case against the Nova Scotia government for banning and fining him for walking his dog in the woods.
And again, I know I profile this almost every show, but I think it's important, and the fact that it's making international news kind of shines a light on Canada's insanity.
A Canadian man is taking his government to court, claiming its response to wildfires violated his constitutional rights to go for a walk in the woods. Deadly wildfires spread across the country throughout 2025, including in the province of Nova Scotia. In response, the local government instituted no-go zones, barring people from hiking, fishing or driving in the woods, which means tens of thousands of people could no longer use the parklands around them. Locals weren't happy, including a man called Jeff Evely, who takes his dog for a walk in the woods near his house every day. Under the ban, he wasn't allowed to do this, but he went ahead anyway, documenting it all on social media, including his resulting $25,000 fine. He's now challenging the penalty in court, claiming his dog walk posed zero fire risk and arguing the ban violates the rights and freedoms afforded to him under the Canadian Constitution. It's not the first time he's sued the government over his daily walks. When a fire ban was put in place in 2023 and similar restrictions were imposed, Evely attempted to file a lawsuit also alleging a breach of his rights, but it was dismissed by the court.
Okay, that's good. And there's a lot of bias within that story. He originally tried to challenge the first ban, but because he didn't get a ticket, he wasn't able to challenge it. And they're trying to pitch it as he was trying to walk his dog in the woods. No, he intentionally went to where there was a close ranger station around, went into the woods there so he could force a ticket onto himself so he can then challenge it in court to set the precedent that these climate lockdowns are ridiculous.
And Pierre Poilievre in the meantime.
Why don't you read a couple questions? I'm gonna.
Okay. From Troglodyte. Smith is a self-described federalist. What could go wrong? And again, of course, her interest will be federal because she is, at the end of the day, a federal politician. However, it's been interesting how she's been walking the tightrope throughout since this latest Alberta independence movement situation started. And again, I wouldn't fully trust her because of that, but for now it seems okay. Dill Bilver says, Nat and Guy, don't you have to be in Alberta a year before voting for a referendum? I was trying to look that up as we were doing the show. I'll come back with an answer and maybe make a correction if so at the bottom of this video once it ends.
Yeah.
Because if so, then that's an important thing to note. Joe Rush says, don't decrease the dollar, decrease the tariffs and taxes.
Yeah, stop printing money. That's what these governments need to start doing. Like that was the Canadian government's solution, and that's why they're in the situation they are now.
Troglodyte says, Carney says Alberta separation is Canada hate. Exactly, and now with the hate speech laws, they'll be able to prosecute it. Republic of Alberta says the only people who oppose independence are not Albertan. and some crazy Albertans as well. But I mean, I wouldn't designate them as Albertans even if they're there.
A lot of people that are scared are the people not supporting Alberta independence. And this is actually a good thing because if they're scared to put their name on a petition, that means they're not going to be motivated to come out to vote that day. So they're just going to be a non-vote. I think very few people on the national side that live in Alberta are actually motivated to go out to this thing. I would be surprised if we don't get 60% or more on that
vote.
Yeah, on the vote.
Sean says, I'm always watching, just not writing. Well, sometimes. Thank you, Sean. And we know you're here. Republic of Alberta says they can live somewhere else in Canada. It's a big country. And it continues with the policies that they seem to be perfectly happy and aligned with. So yes, they can go. But the rest of Albertans that only have Alberta to be able to call at home are not.
Yeah, and I think getting more clear on what you want in the Albertan Constitution and what you want the policies to be and what the fundamental cultural beliefs of Alberta is important because if Mark Carney gets that majority government and you're very clear, you're a very conservative province with these moral foundations and these values, other conservatives from other provinces will migrate there to support it. And even if they have to be there a year and maybe they can't vote, just having their presence there and having people out there with voices saying Alberta independence is the only future for Canadians that are disenfranchised with Canada.
Joe Rush says, I talk to YouTubers all the time too, LMFAO, like you when you yell at the TV.
Yeah.
Troglodyte says, Polyev and Carney have never had real jobs. Yeah, they're, Polyev politician and him kind of central banker / finance guy.
Polyev used to be a paper boy.
That was his other real job. Quebecer in Alberta says, maybe Pedro is going to cross the floor next. And Joe Rush says, sometimes call YouTubers names as well. Not you guys, though. You two are awesome. Much respect. Thank you so much. I call them two names.
We always talk about Alberta independence, and I think we have a big Alberta independence audience. We used to talk geopolitics, and we used to disagree a lot on certain subjects. So.
Oh, and Dal Robinson actually maybe has answered one of the things I had to do a correction of. I will... anyways, put a comment down below after I can verify it. But Daryl Robinson says, no, you do not have to be here for a year, just a registered resident with ID. So you have to.
So that makes, if that is the case, there needs to be a push for these disenfranchised conservatives, once Mark Carney steals this majority government, to come to Alberta to vote for independence, to give the finger to National Canada and to Mark Carney. This is your real opportunity. Mark Carney's not going to give you an election. Well, we'll give him an election, and it's going to be called Alberta independence.
And just quickly, I'll read two more from Rumble. KP4U says, people that don't vote or uneducated are the only ones. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, there should be a campaign run by Alberta Independence saying, Mark Carney won't give you an election. Let's give him an election. Come to Alberta and vote for independence. That would be absolutely fantastic.
If the conditions are
If the conditions are, he gets the majority government by either floor crossers or these snap elections. So.
And if you're allowed to move to Alberta and sign.
Yeah. If that's the case.
If you don't have to be there for a year. But Polyev continues his little tour across America that he should have done right before the elections. From CBC Watcher, quote, Pierre Polyev with Catherine Loubier at the Harvard Club in New York City this week, saying, I genuinely do believe in Adam Smith's vision of free enterprise, that voluntary exchange is the single greatest source of economic well-being.
Yeah, and I agree with everything most of the things he's saying here. I mean, he says all the right things. He has the correct diagnosis. The problem is the Canadian system is rigged against him, even if he does get in with a minority government by some miracle, which I don't think is possible at this point.
So a lot of people in the room haven't had a chance to meet with you yet. You've talked about the economy and trade. Can you elaborate a little bit on your philosophy and your principles with regards to economy and trade?
Well, going back to first principles, at the risk of being repetitious, I genuinely do believe in Adam Smith's vision of free enterprise, that voluntary exchange is the single greatest source of economic well-being, that this means, in practical terms, very small government, low taxes, limited regulatory barriers, extremely fast permitting, and for the government to focus on doing a few things right rather than doing a lot of things poorly. Narrowly focused on national defense, borders, basic infrastructure, a safety net for people who can't provide for themselves. but then get out of the way of workers, entrepreneurs, and consumers to let them exchange with one another and get better off. In Canada, this means that the areas where this is most practically needed is in natural resources and home building. We should be the fastest place on earth to get a permit to dig a mine, a well, build a pipeline, expand a port, or build a home so that our young people can afford a place to live. Those are just some of the examples of how this plays out. But very clearly, what we see when we look around the world is the countries that have the most economic freedom, have the highest standard of living, the least poverty, the best life expectancy, all of the best social conditions. They're all in places with free enterprise. So my purpose is to make Canada the freest economy in the world.
Okay, and that's good. And it's good that he didn't bring up the tariffs there. I'm pretty sure he probably brought them up later. But the way he said the purpose of him doing all these interviews in the United States was to get the United States to drop the tariffs. But the way he always describes it is an absolute fabrication that only the U.S. has tariffs on Canada. And there's been big politicians like J.D. Vance calling him out on this. This could potentially backfire. I mean, a lot of political individuals like Joe Rogan is accepting this at face value, but the people that matter, like a J.D. Vance, a Marco Rubio, and a Donald Trump, see right through this, and it's only going to piss them off.
But at the same time,
but that was a good statement there.
It's a good statement. It sounds great. However, once you bring it back down to reality and to the reality that is Canada, a lot of the things that he's saying are completely now hamstrung by legislation that he himself helped sign, with a lot of the things that restrict the building of pipelines, the climate change nonsense that doesn't allow for building and for getting permits that take forever and ever. He also signed those, and he was also in part. And again, if he got in to get rid of all of those, to get rid of the legislation that has been implemented, it would take a very long time, and then would take a very long time to actually start to turn the country around to the vision that he has. And he doesn't want to admit that.
Well, and he's starting to go, like, he'll talk a good game there to an American audience, but he's becoming further and further left. It's the leftification of Pierre Poilievre we're seeing right now, and he's doing it under the guise of, we have to do what's best for Canada. We need to align with Mark Carney where we can. This is not going to be a good thing. He's supposed to be the official opposition. I don't see him taking oppositional positions that I want to see. He's not talking about the severity of the issues. He's downplaying them all, giving Mark Carney just a way to drive Canada off an ideological and an economic cliff.
And let's see some of those cliffs from Mark Nixon. Quote, Mark Carney has refused to share the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, he signed with China, sharing top secret police intel. This is a red alarm situation. From Chris Warkentin saying, quote, Mark Carney has been caught lying to Canadians about his meetings with the Chinese communist leaders. Yeah, the feds admit Prime Minister misled media. Prime Minister Mark Carney misled media on his private meetings with Chinese communist leaders, Privy Council records show. Documents written by cabinet aides directly contradicted Carney's claims that he raised human rights and foreign interference with his Beijing host, saying on human rights with the president, yes, we did discuss human rights.
Well, and also we know that they signed contracts for intelligence sharing, and he's not going to disclose what's in a lot of those contracts. What kind of intelligence sharing are you having with the CCP, especially when you're not willing to have intelligence sharing with the U.S.? They recently, with drug boats in the Caribbean, are refusing to share intelligence with the U.S. This is a sticking point for this administration. This is your biggest trading partner. You're aligning with China at the same time you're slapping Donald Trump in the face. This is not going to end well for Canada as long as Carney is prime minister.
And also almost deliberately leaving the northern border territory area completely unsecured, and or freezing your soldiers out in minus 30 degrees weather.
Yeah, well, we just did a video on that.
It's coming out tomorrow.
Oh, it's coming out tomorrow. Yeah. We did a video about military scandals within Canada that Albertans should really take notice of so they can do the opposite when they form a new nation. And what do you want in your military? What first principles do you want? You don't want these DEI hires. You don't want these the recruiting of the Canadian military to the CCP and Indian governments is another huge scandal that's almost unbelievable when you tell people in foreign countries.
Yes. But let's see here from Tristan Hopper via Ryan Gertison how much Canada has declined under the Liberals, which is, I would say, a lot. But even from before, there were some things that were already leading Canada in the wrong direction, and the Liberals kind of just pushed the accelerator and went off the cliff and then found more cliffs to go from.
You've probably heard this term, the lost Liberal decade. It refers to the 10-year period that begins with the 2015 election of Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, a 10-year period that just happens to coincide with virtually everything about Canada getting worse. And on that point, the data is pretty damning. You can argue that it's not the Liberals' fault, but the country has gotten poorer, more crime-ridden, and with...
And I've thought a lot about this, and why have they absolutely destroyed the country? Because you can't erect a prison around your population when they're rich, because when they're rich and they have money and people are prosperous, they have the option of leaving the country, or they're strong-minded. When people are broken down, poor, and the economy is growing weaker and weaker, it's easier to trap people within these systems they're creating.
Yeah, communists always love to keep their citizens poor because that way they can't revolt and they can't notice what's actually going on, and they're dependent upon you, daddy government.
The critical shortages of everything from healthcare to homes. Here's a quick review. Healthcare wait times are nearly twice as bad as they were in 2015. Back then, the average wait time for surgery was 18.3 weeks. Now it's 30. Also, the doctor shortage has never been worse, with millions of Canadians having no access to primary care. Also, people keep dying in emergency rooms. That didn't used to be a thing. Crime is higher everywhere and for everything. This is a crime severity index maintained by Statistics Canada. This dip here is right around when the Liberals take power. We now have way more gun violence than before. We're now a world center for auto theft. We have a problem with crime tourism now, and an extra 200 people are now being murdered each year as compared to 2015 trends. All the while, we're emptying out prisons. The economy has remained stagnant even as everyone else gets richer. Here's a chart showing per capita GDP growth among developed nations over the last 10 years. Way at the bottom is Canada. The only one worse than us is Luxembourg. Just last year, Statistics Canada estimated that if the Canadian economy had simply stuck to the growth rate of 2015...
Yeah, and I do see Mexico above them at almost double. But the thing about Mexico is we have a black cash economy as well. So there's a secondary economy, which if that was actually accounted for, would boost Mexico a lot higher.
We'd all be an extra $4,200 richer per year. Debt has basically doubled. It was $612 billion when the Liberals took power. Now it's $1.4 trillion. Military recruitment has dropped off a cliff to the point where the Canadian Armed Forces is so short of personnel that more than half of their ships, planes, and vehicles do not have people to maintain them. When the Liberals took over, the military estimated that they were shorthanded by about 900 members. Now it's 16,000. Life expectancy has gone down. Life expectancy at birth when the Liberals took over was 81.9. Now it's 81.5. And a sustained dip in life expectancy has basically never happened before, save for blips during major wars and pandemics. One reason is Canada now has one of the world's highest rates of fatal overdoses. When the Liberals took power, about 6 Canadians died each day of an overdose. Now it's 21. Finally, the birth rate has cratered. 10 years ago, Canadian birth rates were low, but roughly on par with the rest of the developed world. Now we're lower than every other country except South Korea, Spain, Italy, and Japan, all of which are in the midst of demographic collapse. Why? The best guess is that Canadians want to have big families, but they can't afford them.
Yeah, and he put that absolutely fantastically. I know we've reviewed a lot of those charts and talked about a lot of these things, but it was good to see put in a concise manner.
Condensed, and just the chaos and the despair that if you don't vote for independence, you'll continue to live under and you'll continue to contribute to those horrible statistics that he was listing off.
Well, and again, I'm harping on this for this entire show, but I think there's a lot of conservatives living outside of Alberta once Carney gets a majority government that will want to vote for Alberta independence because they will have lost complete hope in national Canada at that point.
I'm surprised more people. Like, how do you still have hope in that country, honestly?
That is going to be the tipping point if Carney gets a majority government for national conservatives, I think, to support Alberta independence.
But more reasons to leave. From Herzliya, quote, Tim Hortons told the government they need foreign workers to fill jobs. They didn't try raising wages. They called the lobbyists instead. And the government said yes, of course, every time. From March 20th, so recently...
We have a clip on this, the next one, but this is absolutely ridiculous. Let's see what they say in the clip, and then we'll kind of talk about it here.
Yes. From Harrison Faulkner, quote, Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Garnier asks Canada's immigration minister why she is kowtowing to Tim Hortons, again owned by 3G Capital from Brazil, and not fighting for young Canadians. Tim Hortons is no longer a Canadian business. It is owned by a Brazilian company.
Well, and as Liberals are typically doing in the House, they're lying a lot with their response, but she calls her out on it, so good for her.
So did you tell your colleague Patty to take a flying leap when she said that Tim Hortons should get more temporary foreign workers after the jobs numbers came out last week? Like, why aren't those jobs going to Canadian workers? And why are you guys kowtowing to Tim Hortons?
So lovely performance as usual, Madame. Thank you for the question. We have a letter from many Conservative members who have written to me and to Minister Haidu and to another minister of requesting those changes. In fact, pleading that they require those changes.
That's right.
In their province.
They were pleading to end the temporary foreign worker program and replace it with a standalone program.
Absolutely not the case.
No, it is, and I know for a fact.
Absolutely not the case. You were not copied on those letters.
Oh, I was, and I saw them, and now you're misleading the committee. Would you like me to read that to you, or would you like to say that that was a performance too? Look, I get it. Your colleagues have to cover for you. They go to the CBC to say they can't talk to you. You don't talk to your colleagues and the ministers about serious issues like this. That's a problem. So I'm going to ask you this. You were supposed to be here for 2 hours today. Why are you leaving at the 1 hour mark? Is it because you can't handle basic questions like this? Like, why aren't you fighting for Canadian kids' jobs?
That's exactly what we do day in, day out. I fight for them as the minister. The government is fighting for them. I say to you, it's best that you start fighting with them as well.
And she's playing it off like it's a House of Commons. We want answers for the policies the Liberals have. Like, unemployment rate is high in Canada, but it's highest amongst the youth. And that's because these are the entry-level jobs they're giving to immigrant workers that the government is then subsidizing their wages. So places like Tim Hortons would rather hire immigrants because they're getting a 30% subsidy from it. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. The way the system's set up and everything we reviewed today from, God.
What?
Not the government grants, the...
Equalization payments?
For education. For college? For college?
I know, but I forgot the word.
I forgot the word as well. Scholarship?
Scholarship. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't know why my mind went blank. From the scholarships to the way it's set up for these immigrants to get
jobs.
A pipeline right into government jobs, as we've seen earlier. And then they're giving subsidies to places like corporations like Tim Hortons to hire immigrant workers rather than young Canadians or Canadians in general.
Yeah, any Canadian. Because I'm sure right now there's not just young Canadians that would take any job. But they would have to actually pay them a fairer wage, and they wouldn't be subsidized by the government to be able to hire the Canadian workers, which it should. I mean, it should be the other way around. They should subsidize the hiring of Canadian workers and not the hiring of international foreign workers.
Give a 10% subsidy for hiring Canadian and no subsidy for hiring immigrants. You're going to see it's all Canadian workers that will be hired at that point. There was one other thing I wanted to say. We can go on. I forgot.
Again, with Poilievre and his little tour around the U.S. from beautiful Canada, quote, Canada. Speaking to Bloomberg Television in New York City, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says he understands President Trump's argument to repatriate jobs back to America.
Yeah, and he's twisting things here, and I don't think Trump's going to want to hear a lot of this.
What the president really wants is to repatriate production and jobs to America. And I understand his argument that American jobs have been outsourced to places like China. There are literally cases of American factories closing so that Chinese factories can open. That doesn't happen with Canada. Our role in the American economy is to supply the goods for production. 70% of what we sell you is not for final consumption, but it goes into your production supply chain. So I'll give you an example. We sell about $100 billion of oil at huge price discounts, by the way. $100 billion, which you turn into $350 billion of final sales. So that means that the refinery worker in Baytown, Texas, is taking heavy crude from Canada and converting it into asphalt and jet fuel and other things like that, earning six-figure jobs. These are like the blue.
And he's trying to make the case so that Americans take down the tariffs on the Canadians. He never once mentions the tariffs the Canadians have on the Americans. That's not in his framing when he goes on these shows. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump knows this. It's not going to go over well with the administration.
Blue-collar, hardworking American people who the president wants to have bigger paychecks. Well, buying more Canadian goods will allow that. Buying more Canadian lumber will allow your youth to afford homes and your carpenters to swing more hammers. Buying more Canadian aluminum will allow your automakers to produce more F-Series Ford pickup trucks at lower prices.
And why? If Canada took off all the tariffs on the United States, whether it was food or other things, Canada would have extremely cheap food. Why do you have your tariffs and you're trying to make the case that, you would have cheaper things, you would have cheaper this? Well, the same goes for Canada. But the Canadian people just don't realize that because that talking point is never brought up. They wonder why they have high prices. A good way to fix this, especially food prices, is to take down all tariffs on American food. Flood the Canadian market with the American food. That would absolutely destroy your food monopolies and then create real competition in the Canadian market. You can then deregulate the food market within Canada and then slowly take back your food industry with local farming
to your consumers. So if the president's objective is more American-based production, importing the materials for that production from a reliable neighbor at good prices is part of that plan.
Okay, and you can go into the next story, and then we'll go into comments. If you have any comments, leave them now, unless you're behind.
No.
Okay.
And we did play a similar video, but it's interesting that more and more are coming out, especially from seniors, regarding this. So unaliving yourself via medical ways is routinely offered to Canadian seniors unsolicited. Muriel says she was offered maid or medical assistance in dying by her family doctor, by a specialist, and by a funeral home. That's insane. And this is almost being advertised and promoted, she told me.
And we recently played another clip. It's not the same lady. This is a completely different clip. And we also made a video about MAID recently in Alberta and how Alberta is pushing back against the MAID program. It's the first province to do it. But if you don't gain your independence, the federal government is looking to federalize Canada as a whole, and they're going to start taking away your sovereignty. And you're not going to have the ability to make decisions like this in the future.
I was first offered MAID by our GP when both my husband and I went to talk to him about end-of-life procedures, and of course told him that neither of us wanted to go that route. And then when I saw the specialist and was diagnosed myself with cancer, he mentioned it, and then I went to the funeral home to just give them a heads up that I would probably be here myself soon, and she mentioned that they offered maid services if I was interested, and again I said no, thank you very much. I was first offered MAID.
Yeah, and it's strange that she's not the first one we've profiled, that they're being offered at every single opportunity. The last time they really pushed something like this was the jibby jab, and we know there was kickbacks going to people. I'm not going to be surprised at all if there's a kickback. And why would there be a kickback? Because the Canadian government saves off the front end because they get somebody out of using the medical system, which is overstressed because it's underfunded at number one, but number two, they get organ donors this way, and then they sell those organs on the open market. So giving a kickback would be a natural thing I think the Canadian government's looking at.
And healthcare is not just underfunded. It's a socialized system that just doesn't work, and we continue to see that. But
well, and it's a monopolized system. There's other countries that have similar socialized medicine, but usually what they do is they have a public-private medical system. So the private sector can take pressure off of the public sector with people that have the money to go to the private sector.
But both the government and those who continue to push MAID and this kind of I was going to say the word.
Well, we're approaching the third hour. I always have trouble start talking in the third hour. My brain starts going blank and I start stuttering a little bit.
What I was trying to say is those that continue to push MAID, and both the federal government, but also the providers and the people themselves that are offering it and that are pushing people almost towards it, have now a complete disregard for the sanctity of life and the value of life. And anybody who gets to that point, in my opinion, is inhuman. They've become inhuman by denying that there's any kind of value to life and that you should try to preserve that life instead of offing everybody as soon as you can.
Yeah, we did talk about in our recent most cultural video at the end of it about how Christianity is a important cultural value that really helped establish the West, whether that was the United States, Canada, or Europe. And that's important at the founding of your nation. These aren't just economic questions. How do you want to sit the moral table for Alberta going forward? Do you want a strong Christian foundation?
And neither of us are religious. But I do push always that the West and its fundamental values come from Christianity and come from that religious moral grounding foundation that it has mostly forgotten about, but still follows. If you're atheist or not, you still continue to follow. A lot of the laws and precepts come from the Christian moral
Yeah, I'm
foundation.
very sympathetic to Christianity and having a non-moving moral foundation. That became very evident in Canada after the jibby jab era, after the trucker protests, after all the other authoritarian regulations the Canadian government has brought in. You can't have the government dictating the moral foundation of the country. Otherwise, they're just going to constantly shift it in whatever corrupt way they want to bring the country. If you have religion with a non-moving moral foundation, at least putting guardrails on the government, it's a good thing because it's harder for the government to go out of bounds at that point.
Well, it's harder for them to self-assign themselves gods. That's what they want to do. That is what power in the government right now means when you don't have that grounding moral foundation, is that those in power can assign themselves as basically gods that look over the citizenry and control it.
Yeah, there's a bigger play here with transhumanism. I don't want to get into the whole thing today, but there's been some good debates on that as well.
Sure. From Troglodyte, quote, the High River RCMP gun grab should have made that clear. Yes. And Robinson says, many immigrants are afraid to sign. They feel they will be arrested. And those thoughts have been put into their heads by others that don't want them.
And again, I wouldn't take it as such a negative. I did watch that in that video with Igor, where he said he was interviewing a lot of people from Ukraine and other countries where this has already happened and they don't want to be deported. I'm actually okay with it because they're not going to come out and vote against Alberta independence. They're just going to stay home on the day of the vote. So, and I think a lot of people, I think that's the biggest benefit to Alberta independence. People that want independence are extremely motivated. They're having to go through all the hoops to even to get the vote there. The people that want to stay part of national Canada are few and far between. And the moderates, well, I think the moderates are most likely to stay home. And if they were forced to choose, I think they would choose independence. But that's why they're probably going to choose to stay home.
ON5B Hello says, as an unfortunate resident of Ontario, currently with a lot of family in the prairies, it's painful how many people here are so brainwashed there's no hope to save Canada. And that is essentially what I saw in Vancouver and in British Columbia. Again, it's the only province I've lived in when I moved to Canada, but just seeing during the Jibby Jab era, even a little bit before that, not a little, quite a few years before that, but then after, it became clear that most people are lemmings and will just continue to vote for their own decimation.
I don't think that's necessarily the case.
In Vancouver City and Victoria.
Yeah, but even in Vancouver City, people that were having kids and wanted a future, I knew a few, they were actually considering immigrating to Alberta because they lost hope in Vancouver. A lot of people that are losing hope, even though they're few and far between in Vancouver, they're wanting to move. And they're doing it in record numbers. But the interior of BC, northern BC, they know the direction BC is heading, and Alberta is quickly becoming the only hope left within Canada, and that hope is to separate from Canada.
Joe Rush says, when we become independent, Carney will have a majority. Lol. Yeah, and he'll continue to have that for ever.
I think he's going to have that majority before you become independent, and I think if we can push people that want to leave once Carney gets that majority, that's going to be the key to getting like 65, 70% vote for the independence vote.
Joe Rush says, we need refineries.
Yeah, we need refineries. Once you get refineries, you have the final steel you're going to use for manufacturing. So then you build mass manufacturing. Like there's so many benefits because you have the natural resources there and available. If you can build the refineries and then the manufacturing plants and then build up your lumber industry as well, even if you have to operate at a loss for the first 5 or 10 years, you build self-sufficiency that very few places on earth will actually have.
Troglodyte says, Quebec doesn't have to claim their hydroelectric income. What a scam.
That's what I was trying to think about when I was talking about Quebec artificially inflates their books so they can get more remittance payments.
15B says Canada will fail with or without Alberta, so Alberta absolutely needs to go. Exactly. And they're on that path and they won't get off the path because they're crazy. Dara Robinson says, please sign the independence petition by April 7th. This is the one time our voices will count. And hopefully.
Okay, let's go back into some posts here.
And yes, you were just saying this, and we were part of this. From Brittany, quote, BC is losing people at levels we haven't seen since the 90s, and it is happening on the BC NDP's watch. Worse, it's young people leaving. Shocking. The ones who should be building a future here are giving up on it because there is no future left.
Yeah, and I meant to actually put this article further up. I've been talking about this for the entire show. One of my big game plans now is to get people to immigrate to Alberta once Carney gets that majority government. People that have lost hope in the rest of Canada. Again, 41,000 people left BC last year. 41,000 people. That's a lot of votes for Alberta independence. There's a lot of like-minded conservatives within Canada. Once Carney gets that majority, they're going to say, I'm out of here. They can choose the states or they can choose Alberta. If they choose Alberta and they vote for independence, it's going to really, really help the movement. And especially because if they're willing to move from another province to Alberta, they're absolutely fed up and on their last kind of thread. They're going to be willing to speak up and be a voice within Alberta independence. They're not going to shy down or back down or get scared like a lot of the immigrant population is doing, and maybe justifiably so because they've seen things happen in the countries they've come from.
Yes. Now this. From the food professor, quote, the survey suggested that 67% of Canadians want tipping to disappear, but misses a critical piece of context. Respondents weren't asked how food and service employees would be compensated instead. If the question included whether they would accept higher menu prices to offset wages, the results would likely look very different.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I used to work, I've been a busser, I've been a bartender, I've been a waiter, I did a lot of security. And yeah, people live off these tips. In Vancouver, you can see waitresses that make more than doctors and dentists do. The minimum wage is fairly high. I think it's $18 an hour in BC. If you bump them up to $22 an hour, that's a fair price. I think you can get people to the jobs at that price. I've never liked the idea of tipping in general, and I've always worked in industries that have had tipping involved in them.
And even self-serve kiosks. Nevertheless, food policy expert Sylvain Charlebois is rather surprised by these results.
Honestly, I'm having a hard time believing it because the tipping culture in Canada is pretty strong. People enjoy having the power and authority to judge someone's performance as a waiter or a waitress.
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's snowballed and got out of control in Canada now. It's almost mandatory, and the starting tip is very often 15%, 18%, and then 25%, which is absolutely ridiculous. And again, I am somebody that worked large portions of my life within tipping industries.
In a restaurant setting.
In my country, we tip only when we feel that the service deserves it. Here, it's like you must tip regardless of whether the service was lousy or whether it was good.
We actually did survey Canadians on the same exact topic a few years ago, and the number we came up with was 25.7%. But we did mention in the question that the tip would be included in menu prices. Now, in the HR Block survey.
And you also have to realize Canada's been flooded with immigration. A lot of these immigrants are not used to this tipping culture. Mm-hmm. So that's why you're going to have very high statistics when it says, no, we don't want tipping.
From Angers and quote, oh God, some grade 7 classes across Canada are now learning how to write land acknowledgements. Absolutely crazy. The education system in Canada is failing our children. And this is, again, one of the very important cultural issues that I would say should push more and more, especially parents, away from Canada and towards an independent Alberta.
And also,
because we're seeing the results of this. BC is now being basically given away almost in its entirety.
This was one of the first clips I grabbed when I was going through clips for the show today, and I was glad to see that this thing went viral. When I grabbed it, I had seen very few people repost it. At this point, this is making the rounds. People are supporting kind of getting rid of land acknowledgements, I think.
Teach your children how to give their private property away.
Do you think 12-year-olds should be spending class time writing land acknowledgements? Well, Canadian students are being asked to do exactly that as part of their grade 7 curriculum. Students are now learning the Indigenous Teachings and Land Acknowledgement Unit. And as part of this, they're comparing Western ideas with Indigenous ideas, as you can see here. And they're kind of describing the West as individualistic and Indigenous as kind, and collective. As a final project, students are asked to write a land acknowledgement, but not just that, but also how students are going to take action to fix the problems faced by Indigenous peoples. Here's an example of one written by a student. You can pause to read the full thing, but I want to note something
Pause
here.
it.
They're talking about...
Can you zoom in and read that? Yeah.
I am a student at Lake Avenue High School, and I am here to help the First Nations peoples. I will learn about the First Nations people and help to take care of the land. This can make a huge difference for instead of taking traditional cultural lands and destroying things, we can take care of the land, air, and water. Take care, not take away. I hope we all can learn about the First Nations people, teachings, and tell their stories to others. Thank you for reading this, and have a nice day.
Yeah, and it's a shame this indoctrination is happening at such a young age, and they're instilling this idea of specialty groups and classes. Everybody needs to be the same in the eyes of the law and in society. Otherwise, you get major fractures in society. I say it almost every episode, but Central America, South America, Europe, they're all going through the same thing. The United Nations and international organizations are bringing this idea of specialty groups and classes through Aboriginal groups, through First Nations groups, and they're trying to get rid of private property rights on a global scale.
And this self-imposition of guilt as well, forced upon children and the entirety of society.
Taking care of the land, and they emphasize take care, not take away. So you can kind of see what agenda is being pushed on the students here. Here's another one that you can pause and read, and I have one more right here. I'm curious if you guys agree with this or not, so leave a comment and let me know. As well, if you'd like to read the full story.
To reject ownership. Of course, get rid of, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy all the way from grade 7
It's
onwards.
obvious this is the plan, not just for BC. They want to take this across Canada. Alberta needs to separate now if they want to continue to have private property rights. I mean, I've been griping on this for years when these things were just coming in because I knew they were being pushed by international bodies. And then I seen these international bodies start getting cooperation from federal government and then local government. And then when they started setting the precedent in BC, you knew what was coming next. And it has just continued and continued till they gave away almost all the Lower Mainland.
Yeah, it sounds fine. Well, 10 years ago, oh, they're starting to bring in all these land acknowledgements at special events. And now there's no private property in British Columbia. Like, literally, that is the pipeline, and that is where it will continue to go. And also, again, I do have a big problem with the imposition and self-imposition of guilt on people that just take it. Stop taking it. Stop just saying, yes, I'm a terrible person.
Well, and all these issues are used for virtue signaling as well. So they use guilt and virtue signaling as with Mott and Bailey.
And that's why so many people defend it without even questioning it. And defend, you say, you are racist if you don't agree with this, or if you say land acknowledgements are bad. Also, this is insane. From Maria Zelaya, quote, Canada has cooked. A midwife from the UK, so the United Kingdom, just had her work permit denied in British Columbia. Why? She failed the language test. She's from England. She speaks English. English is her native tongue. Meanwhile, 8 people were arrested in January for bribing their way to commercial truck licenses in Ontario. A man in Quebec made over $600,000 helping 709 people cheat on their written driver's test using hidden cameras and earpieces. That's a lot of work. Niagara College had to force 400 plus students from India to retake English tests after inconsistencies were found. Online ads are still openly selling fake IELTS and self-PIP certificates. There is a 25% nursing shortage nationwide.
Well, and we have to remember there was the police departments in Canada giving out the answers to the questions to the BIPOC community. And this was a huge scandal as well. This is going on in almost every industry.
Thousands of people are cheating their way into this country on fake language scores and rigged driving exams, but an English-speaking midwife from the UK during a healthcare crisis gets told to leave.
Yeah, a little bit insane for me.
A little bit? It's crazy. And we also see, I mean, we also talk about how in Vancouver, yes, a lot of people should not have driver's licenses, but yet they do get them. And the people that, even local people, but people that are trying to do their best, because I had a friend who really tried really hard to get his license, and I had to help him and go through the whole process. It took forever for him, but then people were just, because they knew someone inside, got their licenses right away.
Okay, let's go into some comments if we can.
He starts tapping the table when he wants me to switch subjects. Joe Rush says, send them to Quebec. It's the largest province, got the most room for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're severely underpopulated. Nobody wants to move to Quebec because nobody wants to deal with the language police.
or with everything else. Wolverine says, nation will rise against nation king. Okay, I can't read that one. Because there's no punctuation, sorry. ON5B says, TDS in Ontario is everywhere. My mother-in-law lives near Lake Ontario and told us she's scared every day because she's in the area he will bomb first.
Oh my God.
Sorry, not to laugh at your mother-in-law, but God.
And if I see I watch a lot of interviews where people go internationally and they think, what do you think about Donald Trump? And it's like a 50-50 split.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that do like Donald Trump in foreign countries, people are usually surprised, but they say, well, why do you like Donald Trump? He's like, he puts his people first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he does. And Canada is no longer doing that. They're putting their people last and they're bringing new people in to get votes.
Tell her to build a bomb shelter and we'll just wait inside there. Joe Rush says, Ontario is the second largest. Keep them close to Carney and Ottawa.
Yeah.
Steve Larson, hello, says, my humble apologies for not checking you out sooner. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks to everybody that has subscribed and is watching the channel now. It's really helping us out.
Yes, says, thought you were just another woke channel trying to distract from what really matters to us. We'll be watching from now. Well, thank you so much.
Well,
I wonder what gave you the impression that we're a woke channel, but
well,
thank
I
you
put
for
the
being
bears and the animals on the cover because I like the animal photos. And I think they represent Alberta very well because there's a lot of wildlife there.
George says, cool, Steve, welcome to the family. Remember to subscribe. Yes, thank you to everybody that has subscribed. And if you haven't, what are you waiting for? So you don't miss the next one. Cheers.
Well, and again,
thank you so much to Joe Rush for always encouraging people.
Yeah,
For me to
and
say.
again, this is our first episode where we have our companion on X, which means every single post on our X is what we showed on the show today. And we usually post those posts before the show so you kind of know what we're talking about in case you're going to miss the show.
Steve Larson says, can't wait to get back to Alberta, doing everything I can to make that happen.
Fantastic to hear.
And Dale Bilver says, Steve, me also moving to Alberta.
And this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I hope more content creators pick up on this, especially if Mark Carney gets the majority government on the 12th with the by-elections. National Conservatives are going to be disenfranchised. And if they're willing to wait 3 years, they're basically sacrificing the rest of their life. It's time to move to Alberta, vote for independence, and make a change overnight.
OM5B says, same here, hoping to be back united with my family in Alberta by September.
Fantastic. It's good to hear a lot of people are moving to Alberta rather than
back to Alberta.
Rather than going to the States, because last year everybody was fleeing, especially BC, Ottawa, they were going to the States.
Joe Rush says, I believe you do have to reside here for a year to be eligible to vote. Do check into it. I will, and then I'll put in the comments, I'll highlight it as a comment, as a correction. Because we do correct anytime we say something that it is wrong or that that it was wrong. I always put it in the comments or in the description, so you can check there for any show.
Okay, let's get back into.
Oh, sorry. Troglodyte says more direct flights from Armis Sharp here. Okay, moving on. And we will talk about what happened to the Air Canada flight in New York, but we have to wait until RU and BLE. Just if
we do stories that might get censored on YouTube on RU and BLE. We have like 5 or 6 articles today, quite a few actually.
JJ Nexer says this is a disgusting outright betrayal of our own kids. Quote, Mark Carney just announced the $25 million to hand over 200 to 220 students from India scholarships worth a jaw-dropping $113,000.
And wait 1 minute, I want you to read all this, but this one was supposed to be with the other article. And that's why I said, I think it's right after. Yeah. This one kind of goes in depth on the absolute lunacy of giving immigrants scholarships when you have plenty of Canadian citizens that need scholarships, especially with the state of Canada.
That then go on to
work for the government.
Work for the government because there's a pipeline there and they're being taught how to do it by others that already did it. 5 government jobs, 1 in the Department of Defense or whatever it's called in Canada.
And he wasn't even a citizen. He's working for the Department of Defense.
Meanwhile, Ontario is straight up gutting OSAP, slashing grants down from 85% down to a pathetic 25%, ending the tuition freeze, hikes incoming. This is important if you're a student or know any students, because I've touched on this before. And piling even more crushing debt on Canadian students, already averaging 28,000 plus at graduation. It's going to get close to the US, and now the movement is moving. The program is moving more towards debt for students instead of helping tuition freezes, etc. Our own kids are drowning in insane tuition, unaffordable housing, record debt, and can't even afford food or rent in their own damn country. And this government's response: screw the children, screw our children. Let's roll out the red carpet for the elite, with elite funding for foreign students instead that then can get government jobs. This isn't a mistake. This is a slap in the face. This is complete madness. This is disgusting backwards betrayal that treats Canadian youth like second-class citizens while bending over backwards for internationals.
Well, you have to realize you're reaching critical mass in Canada. You're not going to be able to vote these policies out because there's a new voting bloc that's coming in, and they're being monetized to vote for these crazy policies. Alberta independence may be the last true honest vote in Canada, even if the federal government's doing underhanded tricks here. It's the last opportunity to really vote for freedom, because every other vote you're getting is some kind of compromise.
But also especially because through the pipeline we've already seen, and many others, with the subsidizing of low-income foreign workers instead of local Canadian ones, or young Canadian ones. Sorry, I go.
Come on.
I know.
Spit it out.
Well, the thing is, he's going like this to me in the table.
Don't need to tell them everything.
Yes, I do. That's why I'm taking a long time to talk.
Okay, we'll go into the next story.
I wanted to say something.
You seem to not be able to talk right now. Let's go into the next story here.
Let's see how my Spanish show goes when I have to talk about myself. No, but I was...
Oh, yeah, and you do have a Spanish show.
Yes, after this show.
Usually about an hour after this show she goes on. So
all in Spanish, and mostly Latin American and Spanish-speaking subjects. No, but what I was saying is...
Okay.
Can I finish my point?
Everybody's leaving, so why don't you...
For Ryan Gertison, I'll say it after this. The government spent $1 million on setting up this field hospital in Hamilton, Ontario. It opened May 30th, 2021, and was told to be taken down by June 30th, a month later. The only thing it was used for was to push fear onto Canadians. Never forget.
Push fear and line politicians' pockets.
From the CBC, Hamilton Health Sciences takes down field hospital that didn't see a single COVID-19 patient. HHS staff memo says Ontario ordered hospital network to shut facility set up for possible COVID-19 use.
Yeah, absolutely insane. Like, nobody's even using these and they're pushing them. It's the same with this MAID program. They're pushing this hard in Canada. They want to get rid of the old population. So if they haven't disenfranchised you enough so you're leaving Canada, they want to give you MAID. Now the other option is move to Alberta, vote for independence, and give the federal government the finger on the way out the door.
But also, as I was saying before, with all these international Indian, mostly students being subsidized and then going down the career path of working for the government, they're not going to vote against their own interests. If you're working for the government, you want the current government to continue because it's the one that's giving you favors.
Well, and they build
that is most favorable to you.
They build in grifts. The amount of corruption within India is insane. The EU, and especially the UK, is experiencing this right now. They're finding there is just the more Indians that get into their system, the more grift there is.
From the National Post, the Canadian economy has ended up being one of the most conspicuous weaknesses of the Carney government. I'd say one of the most obvious. It's not that conspicuous at all, especially if you live there. But
well, people are starting to notice, and it's interesting because conservatives always noticed right from day one. We were watching them like a hawk. But I like to yell at the TV and debate with the TV, so I watch The Line and a bunch of other liberal Canadian shows, so I can see, like, are they waking up to Carney? What's going on? How are they justifying these policies? I just want to hear what they're saying. And unlike the mainstream media, a lot of independent liberal media is saying we need to see something. If he doesn't get a North America free trade deal, I'm not sure what we're going to do. And I think that's why Mark Carney knows liberals are starting to question him, but they're still going to vote for him. But he doesn't want it to go to a vote because those question marks are starting to come up. So he wants to win it in this by-election next month.
But now he's also helping shift the narrative along with Poilievre. He's having Poilievre also do his
carry the
water and dirty tricks for him in the U.S.
Yeah.
Because now we're seeing that Poilievre is all, we have to be united, which means you have to unite with the current federal government that is decimating the country.
Well, not only that, he was talking about how he's giving Mark Carney updates on his cell phone.
Oh, yeah.
During the Joe Rogan interview. Are you out of your freaking mind? Take the gloves off, man. This is why you're a loser. This is why you're always going to lose. And this is why when you do lose, you're going to lose politely.
From Ezra Levant, quote, I'm in Margaretville, New Brunswick.
Oh, sorry, one more thing.
Quick.
I know I said he's a loser and he's going to lose politely. It's time for Alberta and Alberta independents to take the gloves off. The federal government's going to pull every underhanded trick in the book, and we just need to speak plainly and not take it politely.
But take the gloves off with both of them, with Carney and with Poilievre.
Yes.
There is no solution. Both of them suck. From as relevant quote, I'm in Margaretville, New Brunswick, where another church has been torched in the 10-year anti-Christian crime wave fomented by the Liberals and ignored by the regime.
Yeah, and I do have to give it to Rebel News here because they've kept up on these stories every time there's a church burning and there is a war on Christianity in Canada. We see them arresting pastors where they were leaving liquor stores up. We've seen how they fomented anger against the Christian community through First Nations, through the grave hoax. We've seen them justify these church burnings, well over 200. It's absolutely ridiculous, the stance the Canadian government has on Christianity, and they're taking away nonprofit status to pastors that don't agree with abortion.
Them and Juno News, I will say, have stayed pretty consistent on highlighting this issue.
Ezra Levant for Rebel News. I'm outside a Christian church in Majorville, New Brunswick, that was torched yesterday. As you can see, the front door is boarded up. Sunday service is completely scorched. I'll have a full report from my visit here tomorrow. This is just the latest in a 10-year-long anti-Christian crime wave that has been fomented by anti-Christian politicians and ignored by anti-Christian journalists. I'll have my full report tomorrow.
Yeah, and people like to say Rebel News is just fomenting BS and stuff like that when they talk about it. No, not whatsoever. Nobody wants to talk about those issues, and the government actually sweeps it under the rug and then tries to gaslight everybody where if you talk about this issue, there's something wrong with you. No, there's been a 10-year crime wave on Christianity, and it's been justified by the federal government.
Yeah, they're either burning the churches or they're allowing them to be infected with woke ideologies, painting them all in rainbows, not the Christian rainbows, but the LGBT alphabet community rainbows, and having more and more crazy ideologies seep in and completely take over the churches that are left standing.
Well, they want to get rid of independent churches. These are the ones that are getting burned down, where the ones that are towing the government line with the rainbow flags and everything else. That's going to be the new government religion.
Another government religion that continues strong for some reason from Mark Nixon, quote,
this was a good post, and I like the way he phrased it here.
Quote, we lost the climate fight, says David Suzuki, of course, because that is his grift.
And David Suzuki lives in Vancouver, I believe, close to where we used to live.
Yep, this is his grift. That's why the oceans have not risen a single centimeter in 100 plus years. The Earth is 20% greener today. The poles still have ice. Nothing they predicted has come true. The only fight that has been lost is the climate scam is finished. Unfortunately, I don't think it is.
Sounds like you won. You got 20% greener. Yeah. The ice caps over the last 2 years have started to grow back at record rates. I mean, everything's going in the right direction.
And Canada is a carbon sink. It has way too many trees, so it actually sucks carbon out of the atmosphere, not brings it up. And yet, the climate policies, the climate scam policies continue to be implemented by Carney because that is one of his grifts as well. That is one of the ways he has been able to make his Brookfield Asset Management continue to have oil deals all over the Middle East and other countries. However, in Canada, he doesn't allow it because it's not convenient for him to do so.
Yeah, and we're going to go into the last post before we go over to RUMBLE. If you have any comments, leave them now. We'll read them before we go over there.
Yes, and there is a lot of comments I will have to get through before we go to Rumble.
Turn down your volume a little bit. He gets a little bit loud. No, you can leave it. Halfway through, he goes crazy.
Okay. Ryan Curtis then says, that escalated quickly. He's not wrong, though. Let's see.
I just wanted to do some basic math for Canadian voters who clearly just can't do basic math. If you make $20 an hour, which is more than minimum wage, and you work full-time hours, it works out to somewhere around $3,000 a month, and after taxes, that works out to about $2,400. And renting a one-bedroom apartment is $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month. That leaves you with $400 fucking dollars. And you vote the same goddamn party in that created this fucking mess. What the f? I just wanted to do some basic.
Sorry for the language there.
Is wrong with you, I'll say.
But yeah.
What the F is wrong with you? And
well, the solution is just get another job so we can help the government job statistics.
Yeah,
everybody's got 2 jobs.
Get another job or go be with the homeless population. Okay, now I'll read all your comments, so be patient with me, please, before we go to RUMBLE. Joe Rush says, they say if you hear something 3 times, it registers better. I like that when you read the comments, you rehash topics often at least 3 times. It's good for the memory. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Troglodyte says, the marketing boards artificially inflate our food cost. The marketing boards artificially inflate the food costs. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, a lot of people might not have the RUMBLE app and don't follow us over, but if you want the stories that we kind of post there, again, the companion to the show is now our X account. Every single article and post that we profile on the show is put on there, even the ones we do on Rumble.
Yeah, so it's at Nat and the Guy, or it's down in the description below. Follow us there too. Rafa says,
oh, Rafa's here.
You should do a quiniela and bet on when Alberta's independence is going to happen. A quiniela is a pool.
Yeah.
Like where you pool your money, I think. Yeah.
I don't want to be responsible for taking a bunch of people's money.
ON5B, and we have none. So ON5B says the chicken and dairy cartels are the worst thing to happen to agriculture. They forced a lot of families out of businesses. And it's, again, not just in Canada. They've had this plan in Europe as well. And they've tried to completely decimate family farms and just farming in general to establish government controls over what people eat and how they produce.
Well, and they want to create international cartels now. A lot of people don't know what they're actually doing with industrialized food production. They want to put small farmers out of business, and they want to make sure even food production within the country is limited, and they want to outsource it to other regions. That way they can create controlled chaos when they want and shortages when they want. The EU is outsourcing their food manufacturing to other countries while they're putting small farmers out of business. The same plan is set for Canada as well. Small farming is the future, especially with AI and a lot of other things coming in.
That, but also charging farmers inheritance taxes if they want their family to continue down the family business.
Well, and water taxes, if water lands on your land, charging them for that, like all kinds of crazy things in Canada.
And the EU, which is kind of where the ideas sometimes form first and then they come over. Steve Larson says, all part of the WEF plan. Well, that's where it actually forms, the idea, and then it gets spread out. Troglodyte says UBI, or in Universal Basic Income, is an initiative killer. Yeah, I mean, it ends any kind of entrepreneurship because you don't have the drive to actually go through with the plans that you want to do.
The goal is for the Canadian government and a lot of Western governments around the world to absolutely collapse the nation, put everybody on UBI once they get digital currency submitted. This will put most private businesses out of business. Then they'll take control of the natural resource sectors, and the government will own all that. And then they'll start digging into it and then selling that product on the open market to other people, but not to their own people, because their own people are already controlled with UBI.
Joe Rush says, yes, I am narrow-minded when it comes to end of life. I am very narrow-minded.
Yeah, and we made a video about MAID in Alberta and how Danielle Smith is pushing back, and she's doing a fantastic job to push it back. What we said on that video, I want to see that program gone when Alberta gets its independence. She can only push back so much. The federal government does have certain controls over her. I don't think she can completely get rid of it, but when Alberta gets its independence, you can definitely get rid of it.
Steve Larson says, I failed at that rush. I have 5 kids and over a dozen grandkids. Good.
Fantastic to hear that, because that's a rare thing these days.
Yes.
And I'm sure that's a happy man.
And also says, that's why I'm fighting so hard. And that is the motivation and reason throughout history why we've done things and why we've prospered and why we've built civilizations and cultures, etc. It is for the future of the generations. And that has also been forgotten about, especially when you have a government that doesn't want to incentivize the native citizens to have their own children.
Well, and again,
prosper.
Again, immigrants are going to be scared to sign the petition, but they're also going to be scared to go out and vote. People that have children are motivated for a good future for Alberta independence. These liberals that don't have children that are living in Calgary, they're not that motivated to go out to this vote. If they have to work that day, or there's a concert, or there's some YouTube thing they want to watch, they're not going out to the vote.
Yeah.
I think we can have a strong grassroots base that's highly motivated.
Troglodyte says, boycott Sing Hortons, bankrupt them. Again, it's a Brazilian company now, so go right ahead.
Yeah.
And throughout the world, all the other Tim Hortonses, even here in Mexico, are way nicer and prettier than the ones in Canada that smell like pee and have drugs all over the place.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily the best plan. I think the best plan is to vote for Alberta independence, get your independence, and then put a tax on international corporations trying to do business within Alberta, and put a zero tax or a tax benefit to small local businesses opening up within Alberta, so you can have small local coffee shops give huge competitions to international competition.
Yeah. Joe Rush says, 1 daughter, 5 grandchildren. Wow. Lucky as well. Because from 1 you got 5. you doubled
math.
you
Multiply.
quintupled. Yeah, you multiplied your investment. Joe Rush says, many of us have stopped getting Hortons. They went downhill bad. Yeah, well,
and if you start taxing international companies with tariffs like Trump wants to do, and giving some kind of subsidies or benefits to local small businesses starting up, these local small businesses will be able to give a superior product and undercut the price of Tim Hortons or other businesses. I really hope this is going to be factored in the founding of Alberta.
Yes. And ON5B says, not sure about everywhere else, but here Hortons has no consistency amongst locations anymore. That is partly due to them being franchises and owned by different people. And I think internationally, Tim Hortons actually is owned by the corporation. So here, they're all very consistent. They all look like even better than Starbucks.
Well, and their donuts are made off-site and then trucked in daily.
George says, homeless hangouts here. Yeah, in Vancouver too. It was horrible.
Yeah, and so is McDonald's.
Yeah. On5B says, not sure about everywhere else, but oh yeah, I read that one. And says, you definitely can't go into a Hortons bathroom. No, unless you want to get some sort of disgusting disease.
Well, yeah, and there's all kinds of needles in Vancouver and McDonald's and Tim Hortons bathrooms. And it's very kind of disgusting what happened. They started placating people that wanted to do drugs in the bathroom. So they started putting in black lights and stuff like that.
Chocolateite says, my local liquor store put up a tip menu on the POS system. You go and get it yourself and bring it to them and they want to tip. Same in coffee shops when they turn the screen around and say, oh, how much do you want to tip you for taking my order? Nothing. Thank you very much. Joe Rush says, gratuities, they don't tell you, so you tip twice without knowing. Yeah, that too. When they put it in your bill and then they ask you, they give you a little machine with the percentages on it as well. And there's no zero. There's no option for no, so you have to go into custom, put 0, and then... And I was a server too.
Well, I also served because I lived in Canada and California. When I was a server in California, you actually make like $2 an hour. You make no hourly wage because every tip you get comes off of your hourly wage. So in a place like that, yeah, tips are required to survive. But in a place like Canada, you're getting paid $18 to $20 an hour as a server. So
and you make a lot of tips too. Joe Rush says, let's not forget the daycare with no kids. Yeah. And Wolverine says, you are given to money, Alberta.
Okay, you can skip that one.
That was the last one.
Oh, that was the last one.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to read it. But thank you, Wolverine.
And do we have anything on RUMBLE?
Yes,
Okay,
we are heading over to RUMBLE, but it's only a few.
Okay.
So people on YouTube can also hear it. KP4U says, people that don't vote. Oh, I read that one. I read that one too. And says, that's why Carney smiles as Canadians lose their jobs. More UBI victims, universal basic income victims. Pretty sad.
Well, yeah, and
UBI is just more control over the population because now they're fully dependent upon the government.
We're either going to see a massive push for censorship and going directly after Alberta independence in the summertime, or maybe Carney's going to do the analysis. Well, there will be no resistance in Canada if he just lets Alberta go. Yeah. I game plan a lot of different situations and think about a lot of different ways and what should be the strategies. And one thing that has crossed my mind is there will be no resistance in Canada if Carney lets Alberta go. Why? Because number one, the main resistance is in Alberta, but number two, there'll be massive immigration from the rest of Canada and from all the people that would have resisted in other provinces and migrating to Alberta. So he gets rid of that problem altogether.
But also because Alberta is such a strong conservative stronghold that if he gets rid of them, then it's mostly just insane lemming liberal voters.
Yeah, that's what the rest of Canada will be at that point. All over the rest of Canada will move that's conservative, will move to Alberta at that point.
Yes.
I don't think that's going to be the case, but I have thought about it.
But now we are moving over to RUMBLE. You can find our rumble.com. You can find our username right there. It's Nat and the Guy. You can also find our X username and the rest of our usernames if you want to go subscribe to us there.
Yeah,
X is going to become pretty important moving forward.
Yeah, X is very important because if any censorship comes on YouTube or they cancel the station, that's going to be one way to get out all these articles, even though we're still broadcasting on Rumble. But also it allows us to keep in contact with our audience and tell them where we're going if we meet a cancellation, as well as putting out very, very important information with Alberta Independence on a weekly and daily basis.
Yes, but thank you so much to everybody that has subscribed and that has joined us today that are new, and to all the older subscribers as well. We'll see you over at RUMBLE in about 30 seconds.